2011. First order of business would be the reorganization of the board. Are there any nominations for chairperson?
I nominate Mr. Falcone for chairperson.
Any seconds? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Where did Peter go?
Where's Peter?
What? Where did I thought he was here? Peter, where did you go? I can make one announcement. If anyone is here for the White Dog, is it? Yeah. White Dog, that has been withdrawn. So that application is no longer going to be heard this evening. So you can more than welcome to stay, or you can go home and watch us on television.
Here's Peter.
Here comes Peter. We'll do that again. We'll do this again. Nominations for chairperson.
I nominate Charles Falcone.
Any seconds? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Now it's official. Recommendations, nominations for co-chair. I nominate Jim. Seconds? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Last order of business for reorganization, the reappointment of the solicitor. Any nomination?
I propose we retain John Ryan as our solicitor.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. John, congratulations. Now we can move on. We only have one application, and that's application appeal 2844. The applicant, Eastern University, located at 1300 Eagle Road Street, St. David's, Pennsylvania, is zoned PI. Appeals the issuance of a cease and desist notice dated November 11, 2010, from the Township Zoning Officer. The applicant contends that the use located on the premise of 18.1 acres at Radnor Street and Eagle Roads as a parking area for students, faculty, and/or staff by the college educational institution is permitted by right under the provisions of the zoning code. In the alternative, applicant contends that the use is permitted as a non-conforming use pursuant to 280-101A of the zoning code, or request a special exception under 280-101A1. Applicant further contends that the applicant has acquired a vested right in the use and that the township is estoppel from forbidding the use. Before we start, it's come to the attention of the board that over the past pertaining to this specific thing is some emails, and our solicitor has some feelings to that, and the way this board will handle all emails in the future as it did in the past. John?
Yes, we had, in this case and in the case that has been withdrawn, unsigned emails being submitted into the record. The board cannot accept those. If for one thing, if our decisions end up being appealed and there are unsigned emails in the record which are not self-authenticating, that's going to make a judge wonder, question the validity of our decisions and what did we rely on. So we simply cannot accept unsigned emails for becoming a party or for testifying as to fact or for any other purpose. And I also know that people can send signed letters, although I point out that a signed letter, in my view, doesn't do much more than say whether a person is in favor of something or opposes something. As to matters of fact, if the person is not here to testify and make himself or herself available for cross-examination, I don't think that the board really should take much weight. Another thing that occurred is a couple of board members were contacted personally in some of these mailings, and unfortunately, this board is a quasi-judicial board, and it has to operate as one. And I know nobody thought anything, no one was intending anything wrong or nefarious, but the statute actually prohibits ex parte contacts, in other words, direct contacts with individual members of the zoning board. So in the future, we would ask that any communications to the township be through Mr. Baumann or through me. and not to have direct contact with the members of the board submitting emails. Basically, what the statute says is there can't be any ex parte contacts unless all parties have an opportunity to participate, which case it's not ex parte. Everybody has an opportunity to to speak at the same time. But for our practice, the board does have to act as a quasi-judicial body, and that means squaring a few corners and dotting some I's and crossing some T's. So I would ask everybody's indulgence on that. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cornelia, you ready?
Yes, just Nicholas Cornelia, attorney ID number 27968, representing Eastern University on this matter.
Mr. Chairman, if it please the board, my name is Christopher Schubert, and I would like to enter my appearance on behalf of an intervener, Valley Forge Military Foundation.
I'm sorry, your name again?
It's Christopher Schubert.
Okay.
Mr. Schubert, you might want to offer your address for the record.
Yes, the law firm is Riley, Riper, Holland, and Caligreco, and the address is 717 Constitution Drive in Exton.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rice?
Mr. Falcone, good evening. John Rice here with Matt Bauman, the Township Zoning Officer. One question just in terms of procedure. I received some phone calls and emails too today about this, and I know there's some residents that want to participate, and it probably would be helpful if they were given some information on how they can participate. I don't know whether they want to become parties or whether they just want to give public comment. I haven't been in front of this board enough to know how you treat residents or other. Mr. Schubert, as a well-versed land use attorney, knows that he needs to stand up and intervene. And I don't object to his intervention, but I know there's some other residents here. So maybe Mr. Ryan can address that, whether you have a procedure, they need to sign in, they need to state who they are, and there may be objections over here to these individuals. I don't know.
We do that. At the end, when both sides are done, we ask if there's any comments or anyone has anything to have input from the floor, and each person will get a chance to voice their opinion on it.
Okay. And what if those individuals want to cross-examine witnesses? They've lost their opportunity if that's the way you do this. But if they become a party, they have the right to cross-examine witnesses.
We generally, if somebody has a question of a witness, allow that
Yeah.
during the course of the hearing. If somebody wishes to cross-examine a witness that called by the applicant, we generally allow them to
Yep.
do that.
But that's during the comment period. They can,
Right.
in essence, the witness is recalled.
Oh, okay. So you
Right.
do it at the end? when
Yes.
Right, we try and do everything at one time, and
Okay.
in most cases, try and make a decision if we can that same night, so that when the hearing is done, and any specific appeal, we try and give a verdict, our opinion right then and there, where we can. Sometimes we can't do that.
Okay.
So we try and do everything at one time, so there's not too much later.
Okay. I was asked a question. I wasn't sure how you were going to handle it. I've seen it done a lot of different ways, but that's fine. The township issued just a short roadmap, because we're going to proceed first with the
Okay.
witnesses. The township issued an enforcement notice, which was appealed under the planning code. Since we issued the enforcement notice, we have the burden of proof going forward. Mr. Bauman's here to testify. I have some very short testimony regarding the enforcement notice from Mr. Bauman. Mr. Cornelia and I have spoken about other documents, which I think we're going to be able to stipulate to, probably all the documents, which we'll be able to stipulate to. But I have some testimony through Mr. Bauman in support of the enforcement notice, and if it's the board's pleasure, I can have him sworn in and start that process.
Could I just make one comment? We've received already from Eastern a memorandum of law. I believe that Valley Forge is going to introduce a memorandum of law on the standing issue, but going towards Eastern's on the merits as to why they're entitled to continue using the parking lot on whatever theory, perhaps you could respond to that. I've read the memorandum and the chief cases in it, and would particularly like some response to their argument that the ordinance permits this in the Greeton and the Daily decisions. I would be interested in the township's view of those.
I guess I don't have the Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the memorandum of law. I have the cases that were cited in a letter that Mr. Cornelia had sent me, but I don't have the memorandum
I
of law.
have
But
plenty of copies if you'd like one. I sometimes actually come prepared for these.
okay, but I mean I can address the question. I'm sorry. The issue from the township's perspective is that this 18 acres, which was owned by Valley Forge Military Academy for a long time, was utilized by them as part of their overall operation, part of the academy, part of the college there. And in essence, it's an accessory type of use to Valley Forge. Valley Forge sold that off. I believe when they sold that off, and it continued to be used as a parking lot, it's now a principal use, owned and operated by Eastern University. It's not an accessory use to Eastern because Eastern is some couple thousand feet away. It's not an accessory use to Cabrini. And again, the facts aren't really in dispute here. There's leases. Cabrini leases it. Eastern leases it. It's a principal use. Eastern's essentially operating a commercial parking lot. They happen to be leasing it out to students and faculty, but it's not accessory to them, and it's not accessory to Valley Forge. So that's an issue. No permits have ever been issued for that type of an operation. I think the analogy that I would put before the board is that if you find that this is either a permitted use or somehow a non-conforming use, I can't really address the non-conforming issue because I don't know what testimony Mr. Cornelia is going to put in to claim it's a non-conforming use. We know we have an old 1953 zoning hearing board decision. We actually have the transcript from that hearing, which I think is sort of interesting. I'm going to mark that and put that in. Hand-typed transcript before a court reporter. Somebody typed it up. But we have that, so we know what was said and what was intended at that time. But if you find that this is a permitted use or somehow it's accessory to Eastern, and we have a definition of what an accessory use is in the zoning ordinance, and it has to be on the same lot as the principal use under the zoning ordinance. We know this is not. But if you find that this is a parking lot, what would stop Eastern from putting some kind of a structured facility on there? It's a parking lot. They could put a parking garage of up to 3 stories. Same argument. It's been there. Arguably, that's not even a land development. They'd have to get some kind of stormwater management approval, building permit, but they could do that and say, we're continuing to lease this out to students and faculty. So I think the issue of what is this accessory to now? Is this a principal use? We think it is. And we think it's being leased out. The fact that we know it's being leased out, the fact that students and faculty are the lessees, I think is really irrelevant to the zoning issue.
I guess the thing that I am struggling with, and I'm not made up my mind, as to, how it ought to come out, but the Dale decision particularly talked about dormitories, and it said that in Dale it said that, with a definition of educational use very similar to this ordinance, it said that the educational use was the overall use and that a dormitory was a, quote, part of a use, and was permitted in that case by special exception because that was not an of right ordinance, but it qualified for being addressed as a special exception. And the question I have is, for example, I believe a number of the educational institutions in the township have lots that are subdivided and they're all together in grouping, but I believe Villanova, for example, has lots of little lots all over the place. And no one's ever questioned, is the parking lot on a lot by itself, or is it on with a building? Does it service that building? Does it service something else? But I see, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, support in Greeton and Dale for the proposition that it's the educational use. And it says that our ordinance says a building or a lot may be used for an educational use. And so it doesn't have to be a building. It can be a lot can be used for an educational use. So if the educational use encompasses these various components, be they a dormitory, a classroom, a student commons, a parking lot, a sports field, whatever, that is the concern that I'm struggling with, and I offer that for what it is.
I'll make a suggestion. I think because there are some legal issues here that have to be dealt with, and to be fair to the township solicitor, he needs to see the brief and have time to do that. Instead of getting into the legal issues now, why don't we take our testimony, take our evidence in, give a chance for a counter brief to be submitted, and we'll take that under advisement before we decide the case.
Yeah, I would, in this particular instance, speak an awful early in the hearing, but I would not be at all surprised if this hearing runs to a course where we ought to continue it and have briefing and then another hearing on this, because the issues are quite intricate.
And just to address Mr. Ryan's comments, I read both of these cases because Nick did send them, Mr. Cornelia sent them to me in a letter. I haven't seen his brief. As I think probably you all know, zoning tends to be unique to the letter of what's in your zoning ordinance and what the facts are. We're not disputing that the parking lot is being used by students. I mean, if this parking lot was on Eastern's campus, it would be an accessory use to Eastern, but it's not. And you have a definition of accessory uses in your zoning ordinance that precludes this from being accessory. So, I mean, it's a straightforward case, and I think the facts really aren't in dispute. We're going to argue about what those two cases say and maybe what some other cases say. But let me, if I can, begin with Mr. Baumann, and if I could have him sworn in, I'll ask him a couple questions.
It's Matt Baumann, B-A-U-M-A-N-N, Radnor Township. Stand up there.
Instead of swapping the microphone here, let me ask Matt the questions I have. Mr. Baumann, what's your name and position with Radnor Township?
Again, it's Matt Baumann. The address is 301 Ivan Avenue, Wayne, PA, 19087. I'm the Director of Community Development and Zoning Officer for the Township. I've been employed here for 6 years.
And what's your educational background?
I have a master's degree in urban planning from Temple University.
Okay. And how long have you been the zoning officer?
Approximately 2 years now.
And what are your duties as the zoning officer in Radnor?
The primary purpose is to enforce the township's zoning code to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the township's residents.
Do you review building permit applications, zoning hearing board applications for compliance with zoning?
Correct.
Do you do zoning interpretations or zoning determinations under the planning code?
I do.
You have done zoning determinations. You've been asked to give an interpretation as to a particular use?
Yes, I have.
Okay. The property that we're here about is 18.1 acres in the township at Eagle Road and Radnor Street Road. And what I would like to do is I've marked a document. I've just marked this as T1. Township 1, and I'm going to ask you, Matt, if you could explain what T1 is. I have another copy.
Okay, thank you. T1 is the eastern parking lot that's highlighted in red, approximately the red square, in relation to nearby educational institutions. It's highlighted as eastern south lot. It shows the Valley Forge Military Academy, the college itself, Cabrini University, and Eastern University's main campus.
Okay, so the highlighted area is the 18.1 acres?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's
And,
correct.
This is an aerial photo. Do you know when the aerial photo was taken?
May of 2005.
Okay. Have you?
Are there more copies of that?
I have two copies. I will give the board one of these.
But how would I? Okay, much better. Sorry about that.
Okay. Mr. Baumann, have you calculated the distance from Cabrini University to the 18.1 acres?
Yes, it's approximately 500 feet.
And how about between Eastern University and the 18.1 acres?
Approximately 1,400 feet.
Have you been on the 18.1 acres to observe what's going on there currently?
I have.
I'm going to ask Mr. Baumann, I've marked, and again, I have one copy of a whole series of photographs, which is not going to lend itself to viewing all of these, but I'm going to ask Mr. Baumann to identify what I've marked as T2.
These were photographs taken by Colleen Price, provided to me. They were taken approximately in September of 2010, showing the 350-car parking lot with various cars parked in there with bumper stickers showing Eastern, Valley Forge, and Cabrini stickers, as well as Cabrini College shuttle stop signage.
Mr. Baumann, these photos were delivered to you. Can you testify that that they're actually photos of what they purport to be?
Yes, I've been to the site to verify
Been to
them.
so you can verify that these photos are
Yes.
photos of the site?
Yes, I can verify that.
And why were they delivered to you?
Because there was a question that after the lot sold, that the neighbor was concerned about the types of uses that were occurring on there, and questioned whether this was a legitimate business to operate or not.
Mr. Baumann, just backing up. You testified that this site is 2,000 feet from the main campus, eastern main campus?
No, it's 1,400 feet.
Okay. And that's as the crow flies?
That's correct.
And Mr. Baumann, as Mr. Ryan asked you, the photographs that were taken by Colleen Price and delivered to you, they are an accurate representation of what occurs out there?
Yes, they are.
You talked about when the property sold. Do you know when Eastern acquired this property?
It was May of 2010.
Okay, you've checked the township transfer records and
I have.
confirmed that?
Yeah, the closing date exactly was May 21st, 2010.
Okay, now prior to that date, did you send Valley Forge or Eastern any kind of communication or have any discussion about the zoning on that lot?
I did. It was in February of 2010.
Okay, I'd like to, I've marked a document as T3, and I do have copies,
Can I have one for the record?
of course. And Mr. Baumann,
And you're going to give me the two other ones too, right, Ms. Rice? So we can put it in a folder?
Mr. Baumann, can you identify what I've marked as T3 is?
Yes, it's a letter to Mr. Geiling, Valley Forge Military Academy and College, outlining questions about the south lot pending sale to Eastern University.
Okay. And Did you get any response from Mr. Geiling to this letter?
No, I did not.
And when was the sale of the 18 acres again?
Is this letter T3?
T3.
T3. I have one, too. You have it?
Oh, I see
Down
the
the
letter.
bottom right.
Yeah, okay.
The closing date again was May 21st, 2010.
Okay. So between your sending this letter in February of 2010 and the transfer of the property, did anybody from Valley Forge inquire as to the zoning on the 18 acres?
No, to my knowledge, I never received any, nor did Community Development Department.
Okay. Did anybody from Eastern ever ask you what the 18.1 acres could be utilized for, or ask for any type of permits?
No,
Did you do any zoning determinations, or whether or not, as to any uses on this property?
no.
Ever? You've never done
Oh,
any
but
of that?
you and I did, correct, at a later point when we sent the correspondence to Eastern University.
But prior to the sale of the property,
No.
you haven't?
No, we did, nope, did not.
Are there any permits in the township record, zoning or building permits, to utilize this 18.1 acres solely as a parking lot?
To my knowledge, I've found nothing.
Now, in addition to the parking lot that's on the 18.1 acres, what else is on the property?
Well, there's like I said, approximately 350-car parking lot, and then there's 14 residential units that each have been issued their certificate of occupancy for rental units. 5 of them are currently unoccupied. 9 of them are occupied by Valley Forge faculty.
Is there anything else other than the residences and the parking lot?
To my knowledge, no.
Are there any improvements on the lot or anything like that?
No.
Okay. As a result of your knowledge of the transfer of the property and what's occurring there, did you then issue the violation notice?
I did.
And I'm going to mark the violation notice, which is dated November 11th, 2010.
That's
As,
already in your packet as A4.
well, yeah, it is attached as it's an attachment to the zoning hearing board, but I'm still going to mark it as T4, just so it's separately marked as an exhibit. Okay, Mr. Baumann, this is the enforcement notice you issued, correct?
That's correct.
And there's 3 enumerated paragraphs, 3 violations under Section 3 of the notice. Could you just go through each one of those and explain to this board what you're referring to and why you cited those particular provisions?
No problem. 280-68, the opening sentence of this section says that a lot may be used or occupied for any one of the following principal uses. Next is 280-68, does not list a commercial parking lot as a principal use permitted in the PI district. And the third is 280-68C, when read with 280-68-4, indicates that accessory uses must be on the same lot as the principal use. There is no principal use on this lot by Eastern University at this time.
Okay, Mr. Baumann, the first violations states that Eastern's using the lot for more than one principal use. How many principal uses are on the lot, in your opinion?
How many principal uses? There are no principal uses on there.
Well, is there not a residential use on the lot?
Well, there is a residential use, correct.
Is that a principal use?
In PI zoning district, no.
You mean it's not permitted?
It's not permitted, correct.
Is it physically there, though?
It's physically there, yes.
Is there physically there a parking lot on this property?
That's correct, yes.
Is it your view that that's another principal use?
Yes,
Okay. And you're referring to the opening sentence of Section 280-68, the use regulation section in the PI district, is that right?
that's correct.
That limits any lots to any one of the following purposes, correct?
Correct.
I'll show Mr. Baumann the zoning ordinance. Have I read that? Have I read that correctly, Mr. Baumann?
Correct.
Okay. Now, under that same section, the principal uses, under the use regulations, the principal uses are then listed. Is there any standalone or commercial or principal use of a parking lot permitted in this section?
No, there's not.
And that's the reason for the second violation?
That's correct.
The issue of whether or not this is a principal or an accessory use, you've cited 280-68C, which has in the ordinance a list of accessory uses, including playing field, recreational facility, dormitory, townhouses, apartments, or other dwelling units and accommodations. But there's no other accessory uses in this district, correct?
That's correct.
It says accessory use is customarily incidental to the foregoing and may include. I don't read C as being an exclusive list, that it can only be something that falls, that's enumerated in C 1, 2, or 3.
It does say that. Mr. Baumann, does the ordinance have a definition of accessory use? And if you would turn to that.
It does.
And what does that say?
Accessory use, it's 280-4 in definitions. A use of a building, structure, or land that is not a principal permitted use, but which is entirely incidental and subordinate to the principal permitted use on the same lot.
Okay. And is this parking lot on the same lot, in your opinion, as the zoning officer, as Eastern University?
No, it is not.
And they're the owner of the lot, though? The 18
That's correct.
acres,
As of
correct?
May, they are.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any more questions for Mr. Baumann, but I do want to mark a couple more exhibits that Mr. Keneally and I have agreed are not in any type of dispute. Got it.
Oh, okay, thank you. I've got a T3, but I don't have a T.
need 1 and 2.
Oh, here's a T1 and a T3. Do you have a T3?
I have T3 and a T4. I need a T1 and 2.
Okay,
I'll trade you 1 for a 2.
we're getting there.
I don't have either.
No, sorry, it's 3 for a 2, a 3 for a 2. Here's a 1, there's 1.
1 was the aerial photo.
I'll give you that
Two
back
were
'cause
the-
I've got one.
two is
This
the
two.
parking
We've
lot
got T3s.
photos,
Okay, we got lots of
which is here.
T3s. We need a T2.
This is the only one we have.
Okay.
I'm also marking as T5, this is a rental facilities contract between Eastern University and Cabrini College dated August 23rd, 2010, for this 18.1 acres for parking by Cabrini College at a fee of $80 per vehicle, total of 50 vehicles, $4,000, and there's some other miscellaneous provisions in this. So this I'm marking as T5.
Mr. Rice, were there 16 photos?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm also marking as T6 a parking area and driveway license agreement between Eastern University and Valley Forge Military Academy Foundation with a date of May 20th, 2010.
Mr. Rice, has this contract been executed?
Pardon me?
Has this lease been executed? It has. Okay, because it's not signed, that's why I'm asking.
Right.
When was it, just for wonders, what's the date of this? Oh, I see, August 23rd.
August.
I see.
2010.
Okay.
This parking area and driveway license agreement, again, is between Eastern and Valley Forge Military Academy. It has a date of May 20th, 2010, and is a license for the driveway and the parking lot that's the subject of this hearing. That's good. Yeah, how many copies of these? Yeah, I'm good.
I think I do. Yeah, I have to.
One more. Final thing I would like to mark, and again, I don't believe Mr. Cornelia has any objection to this. This is from the Township records. This is a typed transcript of the September 1st, 1953 zoning hearing board proceedings involving this property. Actually involved two separate properties, but it involved this 18.1 acres, and I think that some of the discussion in here, if we're talking about nonconforming uses, is instructive. I'm going to mark this as T7.
Is this the transcript of the entire hearing?
This is what's in the file, I believe it is. Because on page 7, Mr. Howson, who was the presiding chairman, I assume,
Seems close the hearing.
asks, is there anybody else interested in this case? And if not, we'll take it under advisement and let you know. And that appears to be the end of this. But there is some discussion in here about this particular property. Chris needs that. And with that, I don't have any other witnesses or questions for Mr. Baumann or exhibits.
I have a question for Mr. Baumann. If you know, Mr. Cornelia's brief that talks about Valley Forge Military Academy Foundation being the seller of this property. Do you happen to know if that's the way the other land of Valley Forge is titled? Are they all in the same entity? I realize you might not know that off the top of your head, but if you do.
One moment, I'll look for you. Yes, Noah, on the certificate of occupancy that was submitted to the township for transfer of real estate, listing a settlement date of May 21st, 2010. It lists the current owner as Valley Forge Military Academy Foundation at 1001 Eagle Road.
But the rest of the property that they haven't sold, is that titled the same way, do you know?
I believe so, but I can certainly let their attorney respond to that. I'm not sure on that part.
Yeah, I wanted to see if you knew. I realize you might not know. We'll give them a chance to answer that later. Do you happen to know how the eastern property was titled when they bought this? How they took title? But I have a copy of that deed handy. I don't have.
No, it's an A2, and actually I have to do a copy.
Okay. Now, is all the title of Eastern College titled the same way?
Yes.
Good, thanks. Do you have any knowledge, Mr. Baumann, of any other prior leases or licenses of parking spaces on this lot other than these current ones?
I do not have any record of any
No
previous
historic
leases.
uses?
I do not.
Thank you. I have no further questions now.
You testified the lot could accommodate 350 cars?
It's approximately, and I think Mr. Keneally can verify even further, but I've counted in an aerial 350, approximately 350 cars.
Spots or cars?
I'm sorry, spots, yes. That the paint is faded,
Okay.
but I've approximated. I mean, there are other cars in there, and you can
Line
guess.
spaces, you count about 350 line spaces.
That's correct.
other witnesses.
Mr. Cornelia?
Matt, referring to T1, I believe, which is the aerial photo,
Yes.
perhaps, I don't know if you want to, I have it here.
Yeah.
I'm going to show it to you. You had mentioned, I believe, that it was 1,500 feet from.
Excuse me,
actually-
could you kind of do it on your desktop,
do it
and
here.
that way the people at home and in the room can also see? Thank you.
If you want to go there, I'll go here. I do. Could you scale that again? Remember, we're talking about as the crow flies?
Yeah, there's the scale on this map is an inch equals 400, and to my knowledge, the parcel begins right here. Correct me if I'm wrong, unless you disagree with that.
By the fields, okay.
By the field, so if you take an inch to its closest, we could do it right here.
So this down here, just showing the scale, is not,
That's
that's
it.
not 400 feet.
No, an inch equals 400. So this one down here, the length of this is 1,600 feet.
I follow you.
This red line down here,
Okay.
okay? So what I came up with, if you follow me, about 1,400 feet. Now, Cabrini looks like it's further, but, I know we're not talking about it, but that's what the border is right here for that folio.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, looking at the township code, in particular, section 69, you have that there, 69C?
Committee 69C?
Correct.
Yes, I have that.
And you would agree that that terminology, I'm sorry, 68C.
Gotcha.
You would agree that that terminology may is not all-inclusive. It does include other accessory uses as well.
Is this in the first paragraph, Nick?
68C,
Accessory,
which is, let's see it.
could you restate that, Nick?
Yes, you would agree that that term may is not all-inclusive, meaning that there's other uses permitted as well.
That, I would agree with that.
Okay, now, turning the page and dealing with 69E,
Rear and side yard setbacks?
yes,
Okay.
and referring to paragraph 1,
Okay.
sub 1, and that refers to uses and structures permitted within the district,
Okay.
correct?
Correct.
I'm reading that correctly?
Yes.
And including those uses and structures permitted within the district are under category 1 use, a surface parking lot, correct? The last one in category 1?
Yes.
And also included in the category 1 use, about 2, 4, 6 down is single-family house, correct?
That's correct.
Now, the only other thing that I really wanted of Matt was, and I think we can stipulate to this, there's some township documents that I was going to hand up. And I don't know if we want to do it now or if we can just wait when they become relevant. I'll proceed, okay.
I mean, if you want to just mark them and read into the record what they are, that's fine. I have copies of them. I don't have, there's no objection to any of these documents. They're all township records.
Okay, and I'm going to mark them as A, and I'll proceed. I already have pre-marked a lot of the exhibits, so I'll, and I'll hand these up as a packet so the board knows. First, and I believe Matt's already seen this, and as I said, I'll hand them up as a total. I'm going to mark as A22, and that is a property ownership record card. And again, when we get to it, basically it shows who Valley Forge purchased the site from, and that it was a separate parcel. A23 is the zoning code from 1952, which indicates at that time this parcel was zoned R1. There was no institutional zoning in Radnor until 1965. It was zoned R1, and the code will show that permitted special exception was the permission to use a lot for educational purposes by special exception. And then furthermore, it's already in the record, and that would be A3, which was a special exception granted to Valley Forge Military Academy for Sullivan Hall to use it for educational purposes. It was an old dwelling, and relief was granted for special exception in 1953 for under the old R1 zoning district, and that was A3. It's already been marked as part of the record.
But in 1965, that was changed.
That was changed to institutional.
So then it became of right.
It became of right. A24 is just again, the Radnor Township zoning code from 1960, and the reason that I have this in here is it removed the requirement that you had to get a special exception every time you wanted to do an educational use, provided you already had achieved a special exception previously. Then finally, A25 is a copy of the Radnor Township zoning map from 1965, and that shows this parcel as well as all other colleges and schools at Radnor Township being zoned institutional, PI institutional. That's the first time institutional zoning came into place in the township, and that would have included Valley Forge, Eastern, Cabrini, Villanova, and a lot of the private high schools that we have in the township as well. They were all zoned institutional at that time. And I believe we can stipulate to those records, and I'm going to hand those up to you at the appropriate time. And that's all I have.
I just have a couple of questions of Mr. Baumann as well. And
Excuse me. Can we, just on the documents, Mr. Cornelia, this map that's in the folder that you gave me,
Right.
which exhibit is this?
A25.
Okay, because Radnor Township zoning map of 1965, if you look at it, right, but keep turning it. There's a revision date on this map, several revision dates. So the last one being January 13th, 1992. So I'm a little unsure. I mean, if we're talking about the map that was adopted in 65, that's one thing. This is the map, and we can identify it as the map of 1965 as revised through January 13 of 1992, because that's what this is.
Okay, well, let me ask Matt a question then. Matt, in 1965, was this parcel rezoned to planned institutional?
Nick, to my knowledge, I can't answer that correctly now. I do have, and receipt near my office, I do have actual older zoning maps that I can verify that later, but I need to review that again, and I could provide that to you as well without any amendments to them, so they're clean original maps.
Okay. And perhaps we can leave the record open if we are going to file memorandums that Matt can confirm that.
Yeah, I'm just,
with us.
with the mass of stuff that we're going to need to look forward to, I think, we are going to need a continuance and maybe get some of these gaps filled in.
what I might suggest, what might be helpful, because I was going to go through some of these ordinances and try to get from Mr. Baumann what ordinance was in effect at certain key dates that we will be developing through additional testimony with our witnesses. One of the things that we might be able to do and accomplish for the next hearing would be to sit down with Mr. Baumann and perhaps draw up a stipulation to say that on such and such a date, this ordinance was in effect, the zoning that was in place was R1 or I or whatever it happened to be, and that might help run the next hearing a little bit more efficiently, and rather than even doing some
It'd
guesswork.
be a great idea, especially if we could have that in advance and have a chance to review it.
Yeah,
And have our
multiple
solicitor review it.
copies for
Yes.
everybody on the board and for me. We need, because there's a lot of single documents kicking around here.
There are a lot of gaps, because I only go to A8, and you have all the rest of 24. Okay. Did you have a question for Mr.?
If we're going to be doing some of the review of the historic development of the ordinances, we can, again, maybe do that by stipulation. Just a couple of questions of Mr. Baumann regarding his interpretation of educational use and accessory use. Mr. Baumann, the ordinance that you were referring to and what the enforcement notice was filed under is the current zoning ordinance, is that correct?
That's correct.
And with regard to the current ordinance, there is an allowance by right in the planned institutional district for, and I'm referencing subsection 280-68.A of the zoning or of the Radnor Code, a use for college, private or parochial, elementary or secondary school, or other education institution for academic instruction.
Correct.
Now, in looking at a property that's being used for education instruction, how do you determine that that would be a principal use?
If it's determined for educational instruction, I would determine that with, usually in the township with planned institution zone properties, you'll have structures, buildings that house students, faculty, offices, the whole litany that are related to providing educational services.
So you're saying collectively, all those individual uses together form an educational use?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So if a property just had a single building with a single classroom in it, would that be an educational use?
Yes.
What about a property that had a dormitory on it?
And it housed students, strictly students for residential purposes?
Correct.
I would not associate that with educational institution.
And why is that?
Because again, the intended, I think if we can look for a second, find it here. If you look at the purpose of, if I can, the 280-67, if I can find it here for purpose application of regulations. Bear with me one moment.
May be able to save everybody a little time. I think in 68C2, it specifically mentions the dormitory as being an accessory use. If that's a question of fact, I think it's right there in that section. It's permitted accessory use.
Would that be your interpretation, Mr. Baumann?
Yes, it would be.
So again, moving back, if we were talking about a single building with a single classroom, and perhaps that single classroom had one desk, that would be sufficient to establish an educational use on that property.
If a dormitory had one desk,
No. I'm saying if it was a building that was being used for instruction, single building, single classroom, single desk, that would be sufficient to establish an educational use on that property.
yeah, there is no minimum size for in terms of a building that that states the amount of desks. So yes, I would agree with that.
All right. What about if the property had supporting service such as the bursar's office or administrative offices for that single classroom?
Yes, that would be permissible.
What if there was, say, a health facility or an infirmary that was used for the students?
In addition to that one desk,
No, just separately on the lot.
as long as that educational character is in place, again, getting back to that desk, yes, I would say that that's okay.
But if that health center, that infirmary that was there was just on a standalone lot, without having that single classroom on that property, that would not be a permitted use.
I would agree with that,
That would be in the class of an accessory use.
in my opinion, yes.
Same thing with, say, an administrative office or a bursar's office, if it did not have that classroom on the property.
Yes.
What if it was just a cafeteria that stood alone on a separate lot without that classroom?
No, that would not be permitted.
So essentially, what is critical or key to your analysis is that for an educational use, you have to have a classroom.
Correct.
And without the classroom, all the other supporting services would be considered accessory uses.
Yes.
Even single-family faculty housing.
Yes.
At this point, I do not have any other questions of Mr. Baumann.
Anyone on the board have anything for anyone? Noah? Jim? Pete?
Can I just follow up with Mr. Baumann?
Yes,
I
yes.
want to clarify a couple questions that he was asked. Mr. Baumann, Mr. Cornelia directed your attention to Section 280-69, which, read the heading on that section?
It's area and height regulations.
Right. And then he directed you to subparagraph E. And what is that titled?
Rear and side yard setbacks.
Okay. And underneath rear and side yard setbacks, there is a list of uses, Category 1 uses and Category 2 uses, correct?
Yes.
And the last Category 1 use is surface parking lot,
Correct.
okay? So would you agree that, let's assume you had a permitted surface parking lot, in order to determine if it's permitted, or any of these uses, classroom, monastery, convent, if it's permitted, then you use this table to determine what the rear and side yard setbacks are, correct?
Correct. It's for dimensional criteria.
This isn't a list of permitted uses in the district, is it?
No, it is not.
Where is the list of permitted uses in the
It
district?
would be under use regulations, under 280-68.
And there's 3 paragraphs, correct?
That's correct.
A, B, and C.
Correct.
And C is the accessory uses, which I think we can all agree is not exclusive in terms of the list that's there, but it has to be customary incidental too.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience have any comments or want to say anything? You need to please step up. The only thing I ask is that we can listen to as many, if not everyone that's in here. The only thing I ask you to do is not be redundant. If someone, we don't hear the same thing over and over and over again.
Excuse me a
That's all I
second.
really
Nick,
ask.
you have no evidence put in?
We do, I don't know.
Don't you want to hear
You
their
want-
evidence?
huh?
Or?
You want to get the evidence? I didn't know if you want to put more in when you're done talking, or do you want to add more? 'Cause then-
I think everybody should hear all the cases before we have the audience comment. Don't you think so?
I thought they said they were all done.
No, they were done cross-examining the witness.
Oh, I thought they said that's all I have. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you said I'm all done. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Well, I was wondering what you were doing. You said I have nothing else. I'm sorry. Go ahead, you're still on.
Actually, I don't think, does the board want to entertain argument now on whether the townships sustain their burden as to proving the cease and desist order? Or do we want to kind of put on the evidence and then determine that?
I think we should put on the evidence.
Agree.
Because obviously, our argument is going to be they haven't sustained their burden.
I'd like to
We could-
hear the evidence and see the briefs and everything.
Sure, that's fine.
I think, frankly, my recommendation would be to get as much on as we can
Yeah.
tonight, but I would like to keep the record open for briefs and final arguments for another time, at a
Okay.
time after which we'll have seen all these things and had a chance to digest them for ourselves.
We'll be able to ask a lot more intelligent questions
Right.
when we have a chance to digest
Sure.
all this.
And I think probably should keep the record open for
will
evidence,
do that.
too.
Right.
Just
Yeah, no,
because it could be
for
some
exactly
other
that.
things.
More
We
right
may
come
have
up.
questions on, that we wish to, the board may have any questions that maybe wish to ask based on its review of these exhibits that are flowing in.
Great. Okay, I'm handing up, these exhibits are additional exhibits to what you already have.
Okay. Yeah, I want to have one for myself. Okay.
This is the additional ones. This goes from 9 to 24, 25.
If these are the originals that are supposed to go into the record.
I have a, that's it.
Do you have the originals? Because he said this was the record copy.
These are marked too.
They're marked, I marked.
Which, this goes in the township, in the files?
Are these exhibits over and above
What I gave it to you.
A1 through A25?
No,
No.
Or is this A1 to A25?
this is A1 to A8 you already have.
Right, this is 9 to 25.
Okay, okay,
This is 9 to 25.
okay,
You
all
already
right,
have 1 to 8. That's the,
okay. I'm not sure whether all the T exhibits have been admitted, but if they haven't, I'm going to move them now before Mr. Kenneally
okay.
starts.
You want to move them in the, okay. You have, you had, just to make sure we have them all.
T1.
Last one, it's 5, is that right?
No,
6? 6. 2 leases were the last one?
they were the last two. 6?
You have 7.
7.
You have T1 to T7.
Okay,
T7 was the
7 was the
transcript.
transfer, 6 was the lease. The last 2 leases. 5 was a lease, 6 was a lease, and 7 was the transfer.
Correct. And I don't have any, so I'm moving that they be admitted.
Okay.
And
It's
I,
going to remain open, so if you have more, well, you can put them back.
and I have no objection to Mr. Kenneally's exhibits.
Could I ask that the township prepare a copy of all of its exhibits? Because I think our individual records, I don't have the aerial photograph, for example.
Right.
And then circulate those to the board and to me and to Mr.
And
Kenneally.
the photographs, we'll produce copies of the pack
You
of
only had the
photographs.
one of each one.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Gibb, which one is this? No, it's not adding to the record, right? You're just updating John's?
Yeah, what I'm doing, I'm just handing John a certified copy of the, I just, we had remarked that as A2A, because before I just had a copy in there, and so I just marked A2A as a certified copy for the record.
Okay, well, that probably should go into the,
That goes to me.
to you, because this is already in my original packet anyway, correct?
Yes, a copy of that is.
Yeah. For my purposes, a copy will suffice.
Carl, Norma?
Sir, for raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
State your full name for the record, please,
Carl Altomare,
and spell.
Altomare is the last name. First name is Carl with a C.
And Carl, by whom are you employed?
Eastern University,
And what is your position at Eastern University?
Executive Director of Campus Services.
And how long have you held that position?
About 4.5 years.
Okay, is that how long you've been at Eastern?
Yeah, since August of 2006.
Okay, you already heard testimony that Eastern purchased a property on May 20th, 2010. Is that accurate?
Yes,
And I've marked as A2 a copy and a certified copy of the deed for that transaction.
yes,
And you recall what the purchase price on that transaction was?
yes, $10 million.
At the time of purchase of the property, how was the premises being used?
It was being used by, of course, Valley Forge Military Academy, Cabrini, and Eastern as student overflow parking.
And we're talking about the parking lot, that's how that was used?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And the houses were occupied by Valley Forge folks.
Okay, how many parking spaces are there?
Well, security had counted 307. So I understand there's a discrepancy. So I didn't count them physically myself, but they have 307. So it must fall between that and what Matt's number is.
Okay. As regards to Eastern, how is the parking used and for whom?
Well, currently it's used in the same fashion. Eastern uses it for student overflow parking, and Cabrini also uses it for overflow parking.
And who can park in that lot?
Well, right now that Cabrini has freshman students there, we have freshman students and other students that have cars and medical conditions that they have to leave campus regularly, that they can't park on campus for the first year. And if they have jobs or they need to go help their parents or something of that nature, they're the folks that park there. They
Okay.
have special conditions.
All right, so Eastern and Cabrini, freshmen are not allowed to park on campus. Is that accurate?
For Eastern, I don't know Cabrini's policy about freshman parking on
Okay,
campus, but
and-
I believe that it's theirs.
So for Eastern's purposes, that lot is used for freshmen who have special circumstances?
Yes.
And are just on-campus residents permitted to park in that lot?
That is correct, only on-campus residents.
So commuters?
No commuters.
Okay. And is there a shuttle service provided by Eastern?
Not a shuttle to say a shuttle, but security uses a van, and it's a will call during the day. When they arrive there, if they need help or assistance and get back to campus, they call security, and security brings their van over, picks them up, and brings them to campus.
Does Cabrini also use a van? Shuttle van?
Cabrini uses a shuttle.
And that's the current use of the property?
Yes.
And how about from a Valley Forge standpoint? How do they use it?
Right now, Valley Forge is occupying the homes as they always have, and if they have any overflow parking with their students, that's where the cars end up.
And this use is the same use as before you purchased the property?
Yes, the use of the property has not changed. It's been exactly the same.
I've marked as A9 and A10, and they're the leases that I believe John has already handed up as on his T exhibits. And I will just ask, there's a parking area and driveway license agreement, Carl, that I've marked as A9, and that's the agreement between Eastern and Valley Forge Military Academy?
Yes.
For the use of the lot. And then A10, again, this has been marked by the township already, is the agreement between Eastern and Cabrini, is that correct?
That's correct.
Has anything changed on this site since Eastern purchased the property?
No.
Now, I'm going to show you the site plan that's marked as A5. And maybe you want to step up to the... And this is an engineer plan that I've marked as A5, correct?
Yes, that came from AEC Engineering.
And this area here,
Yep,
that's the parking?
That is
lot
the
that
parking
we're
lot.
referring to? And it's bounded by how many streets?
there would be three, Radnor Street Road, Walnut Lane, and Eagle Road.
So Eagle Road to the north, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Radnor-
Radnor Street Road is to the east, and then Walnut Avenue would be to the south.
All right,
Oh, sorry. Radnor Street Road's west.
and is the lot fenced?
There are fences along Eagle Road, Radnor Street Road, and Walnut Avenue. It's an old iron fence that's been there for quite a while.
And what's the current access to this site?
Currently, all the access is off of Radnor Street Road.
Okay, there's no access off of Eagle Road?
Not currently.
Has there ever been any access off of Eagle Road?
No. There is a small driveway that comes off of Walnut Lane, though, to get to the back of these few homes here.
Now, you've heard regarding Sullivan Hall, and there's going to be testimony how Sullivan Hall was demolished. Was there a parking area established for Sullivan Hall?
I believe it's this parking lot here where Sullivan Hall used to be somewhere up in this area here, and that's where they used to park for that. There was like a little circle turnaround to drop people off, I'm assuming, and then that's the way they went in and out.
And that parking lot still exists?
Yes.
So this parking lot was not used for Sullivan Hall?
It was used for Sullivan.
The big
Oh, this
one-
was not.
The
yes.
large parking
The-
lot?
No, not the large lot, this lot, I'm assuming, and whatever else wouldn't fit there would probably go in there.
So the large lot was used for other has never been used for parking for Sullivan Hall? Is that the
That-
testimony?
Well, that I don't know, but I believe there would be some parking and overflow
Brian
from there.
can testify, that Brian Geiling we have from Valley Forge Military Academy, he can testify to that.
Excuse me, is there another copy of that? That's not in my,
That should be in the early.
with the application?
Chuck, do you have an additional set, or I think,
Is this the one you're looking for?
I think he was looking for an additional set of exhibits. When I handed the
Well, just
application,
that.
it was 10.
Yeah,
Just
that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's listed in here as a survey of the site, but it's not in the folder.
Yeah, there's a whole, when I submit the application, there's 10 copies of everything that I submit.
Thank you.
Now, just to go through also, and actually, we have additional exhibits. I'm going to show you first, because this has been my additional packet, A6, and does that show the parking lot
Yes.
on the site? And when was that aerial photo taken?
Well, the date on the top is 1971.
And just to mark, I believe everyone's familiar with the site, but A7 and A8 are just photographs of the site.
Yes, that is correct.
And as to future use of this site, does Eastern have plans eventually for this site?
Yes, we do, and they are filed as part of record here.
Okay, you filed a long-range development 5-year master plan with the township?
Yes.
Okay. And you've had discussions with the neighbors regarding the use of the site also?
Yes, we had several meetings starting in September. December the 15th is where we discussed the future enhancements to this property.
And I'm just going to mark as A11, and this is the 5-year master plan that's been filed with the township?
Yes.
And if you could quickly describe what the proposed future use of the site would be?
Well, we're looking at a redeployment of our graduate program. Currently, it's housed on the main campus in Eagle Learning Center. So redeploying that to this site with the classroom and administrative facility similar in size to what is existing. Graduate student residence hall, a small parking lot enhancement up top here for those two buildings. We are going to, with PennDOT approval, we're going to change the entrances from Radnor Street Road to Eagle Road. We're actually going to close off the main entrance to the parking lot itself. The entrance across from Beech Tree will only exist for emergency vehicles. It'll be have ballards or gates. The parking lot will be shrunk to take care of the drive that comes in and bring it back to within current setbacks. And then we'll be adding tree islands into the parking lot itself. And as you can see here, we're adding landscaping and berms as required.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Is it Altamare?
Yeah, Altamare is fine.
Okay.
Carl.
Mr. Altamare, just a couple questions. The parking lot that's on this property now, is it striped, or the spaces striped on there?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And you've counted 307?
Security has counted 307.
Okay. You testified that, and we have the agreements that Eastern has with Cabrini and with Valley Forge. Is there any other rental agreements for the use of that property with any other person or any other business or any other entity?
For the
For
parking
the
lot?
parking lot, correct.
Not that I'm aware of.
You also testified that Cabrini has a van,
A small shuttle, that's correct.
and they, in fact, they have a sign in the parking lot that
That is-
directs anybody that wants to go to Cabrini that that's where the van stops.
That is correct.
Because it's, I guess, a little bit too far to walk to the Cabrini site for most people that park there, correct?
I would think that, I don't know that it's too far, but yeah, they do use the shuttle service when it's available.
Okay.
It's easier, I'm assuming.
And the same holds true for Eastern. Eastern, I think you testified that there's a van that's on call if somebody wants to be picked up at the parking lot and to be brought into Eastern University, correct?
It's not really on call by itself. It's a will call. It's actually the security van, and they are instructed to come down Eagle Road when they shuttle folks back and forth.
Okay, so if I park in that parking lot, how do I, and I don't want to walk to Eastern, then how do I get that security van to come pick me up?
Call security's phone number, and that's how they get in contact with them.
From my cell phone?
Yes,
Okay, there's no phone or any communication on
I'm
that?
not aware of any.
Okay. In terms of, and how long have you worked at Eastern?
Since August of 2006.
Okay, so prior to August of 2006, were you a student there, or?
No.
So you really don't know what happened in the past on that property personally? You have no firsthand knowledge what has happened or what's been on that property prior to 2006,
I've
correct?
not witnessed it personally.
So anything prior to 2006 is just what you've been told or what you've seen from records in terms of what was on that property in the past, correct?
Yes.
You know when the parking lot was put in?
The parking lot, I believe, was built in the 60s.
Okay. But you've been told that. You don't have any firsthand
I don't know that for a
knowledge.
fact, but we do have that aerial photo from '71, so it's at least existed to then, so that would put it somewhere in the 60s, my assumption.
Do the individuals living in or leasing the homes, the Valley Forge faculty, do they use that parking lot at all, just overflow?
There may be one or two cars from the two homes higher up that park down there. It is possible that a few residents in those homes use that parking lot.
Okay, and as I understand your testimony, both Cabrini and Eastern students, it's just the freshmen that are using the lots, is that right?
I don't know that for a fact from Cabrini, but that's what I have on record that they use for freshman students.
And how many freshman students are using that lot?
They have-
From Eastern?
From Eastern right now is 47.
Okay. They come in and get a permit or something to use that
Yes,
lot?
they register with security as a permit to park over there.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Oldemar. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. You said the people from Eastern who use this lot are
Resident students.
people that aren't allowed to park on campus, but they are allowed to park there?
First-year freshmen are not allowed, and we allow them a special exception for medical reasons, internships, jobs. They have to.
But not on campus, only to park over here.
That is correct.
So this is not considered part of the campus for that regulation purpose? No,
Then,
this is
yes.
off campus.
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Any more?
Brian?
raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And state your full name, please.
Brian Geiling. Last name is Geiling, Geiling. First name spelled with a Y.
Brian, by whom are you employed?
Valley Forge Military Academy and College.
And how long you've been employed there?
13 years.
And what is your position at Valley Forge?
Currently, I'm the Vice President for Facilities.
And what was your position prior to that?
Prior to 2007, 2006 timeframe, I was Director of Facilities. Before that, Assistant Director of Facilities in various titles.
Okay, and we've marked, pre-marked already as A12, and have handed up a certified copy of the deed for the purchase by Cabrini. And when did, or excuse me, by Valley Forge Military Academy, and do you recall when Valley Forge Military Academy purchased the property?
1953.
And the deed states it was purchased from the estate of William Henry Sayin.
That's correct.
Can you spell that name?
S-A-Y-A-N. And you've heard testimony here today that it's approximately, or is 18.1 acres.
That's correct.
And is it divided from the main campus of Valley Forge Military Academy?
Yes, it is. It's a separate parcel.
Has it always been a separate parcel?
Yes, it has.
And how is it divided from the military academy?
It's separated by 3 roads: Eagle Road to the north, Radnor Street Road to the west, Walnut Road to the south. There's a cast iron fence that surrounds the perimeter of the property on both the lower portion of what used to be South Campus and the northern part of Valley Forge Military.
And there's no driveway, or has there ever been a driveway, Eagle Road into this site?
According to every site plan I have going back, there's never been.
And the only access to the site by driveway is from Radnor Street Road?
That's correct.
And I believe Carl testified a small dirt road?
Yeah, there's a small access road to the lower 4 or 5 houses called Lynch Road off
Okay.
of Walnut.
Is there a pedestrian access by way of Eagle Road?
Yes, there is.
And is that how people from Valley Forge access the site?
It is, yes. That's exactly how, that's the one of 2 pedestrian paths from the north campus to that parking lot.
Okay, I have pre-marked, as the board knows, the township property code, property township record code for this site. Now,
Sorry, which exhibit are we looking at?
that was,
That you're
I
referring?
had already marked it. I wasn't going to refer to it, so it's already marked and identified, but it's the property, 822. Yes. And again, looking at the property record, it shows that Valley Forge purchased it from the William Henry Sayin estate,
That's correct.
and it shows it as a separate parcel.
That is correct.
And Mr. Sayin, at least according to township record, acquired the parcel in 1899.
That's what it says.
Now, also, has Valley Forge filed long-range development plans
Yes,
for the site? And they've been filed with the township as well?
yes.
And the first one has been marked as 813, and that's a plan from 1997.
97, 98 timeframe. That's it.
Correct?
Yes,
And it refers to area A, B, and C.
correct.
And area A is indicated as a separate area
Yes, it is.
with a separate gross square footage and net square footage and impervious coverage.
Yes,
Also was a long-range development plan filed for the township in 2008, which has been marked as A14.
yes,
And again, the same thing, and matter of fact, it actually shows a crosshatch South Campus.
That's correct.
And we've marked as A15, and this is an aerial, and that's taken in when? This is from the Delaware County Planning Commission?
1960.
And it's from the Delaware County Planning Commission,
That's correct.
and does not show the parking lot at that time.
That is correct.
And what's been marked as A16, again, is a plan prepared by Delaware County Planning Commission. And when was that taken?
1965.
And that does show the parking lot?
It does.
And then A17, this is a site location plan prepared by Gills Hughes Architect in 1974,
That's correct.
and it shows the parking,
That is correct.
and it has written in it what year.
1961.
Now, where was this plan?
That was found in our historical site plans.
And you have access to the plans in
I do.
reference to Valley Forge Military Academy?
Yes.
And that's part of your role?
It is.
To keep those plans?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as A18, and you can tell the board what A18 represents.
A18 is a pictorial recap of the 50th anniversary of Valley Forge Military. It is broken down in chronological order. In the beginning, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And the 60s are identified as starting on page 150. On page 159, in the lower left-hand column, you will see a picture of cadets performing drill and ceremony on a field that is listed as Sullivan Parking Area, which was up until the late 90s, the parking lot in question was called Sullivan. And the other photographs in this, on this page all correspond to 1961.
And according to the records at Valley Forge Military Academy, how was that parking lot used from 1961, say, until 2001?
During my time there in the late 90s, I know that the parking lot was used for overflow parking, for special event type parking. I do know that, I cannot say that Eastern University did use it, but I know that Cabrini College did use it for overflow parking, and I believe that was for graduation.
And also, the parking lot referring to that's marked on A17 as 1961, do any of the residential houses use that parking lot as well?
Yes, they do. A few of them do.
And at that period of time, did Sullivan Hall existed on this lot, correct?
That's correct. It did. It rested at the top of the hill. There's a large pitch from the parking lot looking up vertical incline. Sullivan Hall was at the top. There is still to this day the parking lot, which was used by Sullivan Hall staff and the bachelor officers' quarters that were also in that building.
And did Sullivan Hall have its own parking lot as well?
It did, yes.
And that's been identified, I believe, in A5?
Yes, that's right here.
Okay, and you're pointing to that kind of an area that comes from Radnor Street Road to a square rectangular portion.
That's correct. The offset is correct here. This is the existing area where the parking lot is, and Sullivan Hall did rest in this area where the tray line is shown on here at the top of the topographical.
Okay, we have testimony here that Sullivan Hall was granted by special exception in 1953.
That is correct.
And how was Sullivan Hall used by the Academy?
It was used as a health center or infirmary. It was also used as a BOQ, what we call bachelor officers' quarters. The doctors, the nurses had offices in there. There was numerous treatment wards, etc.
So it didn't have classrooms?
I did read that it did have classrooms, but I cannot verify that for sure.
Was it eventually demolished?
It was.
And I've marked as A19 was demolished in 2001?
That's correct.
And In addition to the overflow parking, did Eastern and Cabrini eventually start leasing parking spaces from Valley Forge Military Academy?
They did. In early 2000s, there was formal documentation leasing to both schools and institutions for parking spaces in the lower lot.
Okay, and I've marked as A20 in their leases starting from 2004 going through 2010 for Eastern,
That is correct.
and these were actually executed leases.
Yes, they were.
And also A21 from the time frame 2005 to 2010 for Cabrini, is that correct?
That's correct.
Has anything changed regarding the use of the parcel since the sale to Eastern?
No, sir.
That's all I have.
Mr. Rice, you have any questions?
Geeling?
Geiling.
Geiling. Mr. Geiling, how long have you been employed there?
13 years.
And prior to that, prior to 13 years ago, were you familiar with what was occurring at Valley Forge on that
Yes.
site? Were you a student there?
I was.
And how long were you a student?
I was a student for 6 years, through the 80s and into the 90s.
Okay, so you have almost 20 years firsthand knowledge of what's been occurring on that property.
Yeah, short lapse in between, but yes.
Okay, Mr. Cornelia asked you about the 18.1 acres and whether or not it was a separate parcel. And as I understand it, it was separated from the rest of the activities by Eagle Road, correct? And
That's
still
correct.
is by
yes,
Eagle Road.
It is.
But when I look at A17, and let me just, you testified about A17, and I'd just ask you to look at A17 again for me, if you would. This is the plan that has a date of 1974 on it, and it shows the Eagle Road parcel. And if you could just point to the 18.1 acres on that.
That is this portion down here.
Okay. And this is the parking area we're talking about?
That is correct.
And that was in existence back in '74, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the little boxes around that are the faculty homes at that time?
That's correct.
And then right across the street, you have a main parade area, the main Valley Forge buildings, and then there's some other small boxes up here. And what are those small boxes?
Those are the
there?
same. They're staff and faculty housing.
Okay, so even though this is a separate parcel separated by a road, it was used as an integral part of the overall campus by the students and by the faculty, correct?
The faculty lived in the quarters. The cadets did use the health center. The staff and faculty lived in Sullivan Hall, which is also the health center. And from the time I've been at Valley Forge, the cadets have used that parking lot, that lower parking lot. There's a total of 4 parking lots down there.
Okay, and do you know what the condition of Eagle Road was back in the 60s or 70s?
I do not.
But it appears to me from this plan that faculty and staff were migrating back and forth Eagle Road from the main campus to the 18.1 acres as part of the daily operations out there, correct?
You can assume that.
Okay. Well, you've been there 20 years. I mean, did you migrate back and forth, use the parking lot
Absolutely.
while you were a student?
Yes, I did.
And now as an employee, do you back and forth there as a facilities
I do.
prior to the sale?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That was not a separate tax parcel or folio number, though, until this year, correct?
That's correct.
That was a specific request that Valley Forge made about the time the sale went through, correct?
Roughly that time, yes.
So it's separately described in a deed, but it was never on the tax rolls as a separate tax parcel, right?
To my knowledge, that is correct.
Okay. But it was used jointly with the rest of the land for the operations of Valley Forge, right?
Yes.
Okay. The prior leases that Mr. Cornelia asked you about, A21 and A22, they've been marked. A20 is the a series of leases between Valley Forge and Eastern, which date from I believe, 2005 through 2009, correct?
Yeah, there may be one there from 2003, 2004 timeframe.
Okay, but there was no leasing of that parking lot to Eastern prior to, let's say, 2003 or so. Is that right?
There was usage by other parties not affiliated directly with Valley Forge, to include neighbors, and that is also documented, but the formal documented leasing by other schools prior to that time, I have nothing to show for that.
Okay. But this 820, the leases that have been entered into the record between Valley Forge and Eastern, was for a specific amount of money and a specific amount of number of vehicles, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And do you know, prior to this lease with Eastern, you said that other individuals and maybe other facilities, other students may have used that. Was there any rent being paid, or people were just pulling in there and parking?
I couldn't
You don't
confirm
know?
that, no.
Okay. But you're familiar with these leases?
Yes.
That have been marked, because Valley Forge is described in here as the foundation, and Eastern is described in here as the customer.
That's correct.
Eastern was Valley Forge customer in terms of purchasing parking spaces during this time, right?
That's correct.
And the same would hold true with 821, which is the series of leases covering approximately the same time period between Valley Forge and Cabrini. The 2009, which would be the last lease, I assume, before the property was sold, was $75 per vehicle for 50 vehicles, or $3,750. Does that sound correct?
If that's what you read, then it is, yes.
Okay. And they also are described as Valley Forge's customer. So we had marked, Mr. Baumann had marked an exhibit earlier tonight, which is a letter that he sent in February of 2010. Do you remember that letter?
I do.
You want me to show it to you?
No, I know what it looks like.
Okay. It's Exhibit T3. It's a letter dated February 23rd, 2010. And in that letter, Mr. Baumann raised some questions about the effect of the separation of the 18-acre lot and the sale of it to Eastern on a handful of zoning issues, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Whether there would be nonconformities created, what is the effect of the 1953 zoning hearing board decision, et cetera. When you received that, you had no conversation with Mr. Baumann regarding this letter, correct?
Immediately, or?
Before the sale of the property in May.
I did talk to Mr. Baumann once on the telephone, but I couldn't tell if he was before or after the sale of the property.
Okay. But you didn't ask him to give you any kind of zoning interpretation, or sit down and look through the file, look through, you know, what we're looking through tonight in terms of permits or anything. There really was no response from Valley Forge until probably the fall of this year,
That's
of
correct.
last year.
Yes.
Okay, after the sale took place.
That's correct.
Correct? And as far as you know, Valley Forge has no specific permit for this parking lot in your records.
That's correct.
But it's been used accessory to the other operations of Valley Forge over a long period of time, right?
It's been used by Valley Forge, yes.
Okay. And only recently, it's been leased out since '02 or '03 to Cabrini and to Eastern, correct?
It's been formally leased. Formally leased.
Okay. Any of those leases ever sent to Radnor Township or anybody at Radnor Township?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, we wouldn't typically get copies of these leases, would we?
No.
You testified that the prior to prior to these formal leases, that the parking lot was primarily used by Valley Forge, and I believe you said that Cabrini would use it for graduation for overflow.
Yes, they've used it for graduation. We've used it for parking for our cadets, special event parking. We have a number of large events throughout the year which are attended by the public, a lot of local folks, other visitors directly affiliated with Valley Forge. So yes, it's been used.
Okay,
And it was
but
also
I'm-
used by Cabrini.
But I'm talking about the time period prior to these formal written leases. I thought that you had testified that Eastern wasn't, to your knowledge, Eastern was not using that, but Cabrini used to use it for graduation for overflow. Let's say 10 years ago, prior to these written leases. That was my understanding of what you testified.
That's correct,
to.
yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Geiling.
Any questions from the board? Norma, would you like to take a break? Okay. Why don't we adjourn for 10 minutes, just take a stretch break? Gentlemen, can we start, please? Mr. Cornelius, some more?
I just have a, I don't know if this is working now. It is. I just have a couple of questions of Mr. Geiling, actually maybe just one question. Mr. Geiling, you had testified with regard to various documents that showed the parking lot in some instances and parking lot not existing in other instances. We had the aerial from 1960 that did not show the parking lot, but then the aerial from 1965 that did show the parking lot. Then you introduced the yearbook that indicated that the parking lot was in existence in 1961, as well as that site plan as well that had the handwritten notation of 1961. After your investigation was completed, going through all these historic records at Valley Forge Military Academy, did you reach a conclusion that the parking lot was in fact built in 1961?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, I did.
Excuse me, is that all? I was going to say, if you're going to have more questions, could you just stand in front of the microphone, please?
That's all the question. I don't have any other questions of Mr. Geiling.
Any questions for the board? Mr. Rice, you have any questions?
I would ask my exhibits to be made part of the record, and I know Chris was going to call one witness from Valley Forge Military Academy.
Okay.
At this point, I'd like to call Diane Eckert.
Mr. Canino has 25, right, 25 pieces, correct? That's what the top sheet you had, I thought.
Yeah, it says the top sheet said this.
I do. And state your full name and spell it. Diana Eckhart, Eckhart. Okay.
You can have a seat, Mrs. Eckhart. Mrs. Eckhart, you're an employee of Valley Forge Military Academy,
Yes, I am.
and what do you do for Valley Forge Military Academy?
I'm the administrative assistant in the health center, Rose Hall as we know it now. I'm sorry, I'm the administrative assistant in the infirmary at Valley Forge Military Academy now in Rose Hall.
And how long have you held that position?
I started at Valley Forge in February of 1964 and worked in the infirmary in Sullivan Hall until '69, and then returned in '83, '84 school year and have been there since, ever since.
So you've been with the academy for a very long period of time.
Yes, sir.
And I take it that you know quite a bit of history of the academy, what was going on over the years, especially with regard to the use of Sullivan Hall.
Yes, I think I do.
Now, your testimony was in February 1964, you were working in the infirmary at Sullivan Hall, is that correct?
Correct. It was the infirmary, yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the board in a little bit more detail what that building was being used for in 1964?
The first floor of the Sullivan Hall was the infirmary, where we had doctor's office, nurse office, and the rest of the floors were wards for the students, rooms for them to stay when they were sick. That was the first floor, and we were all it was all considered the infirmary.
And I take it there was a second floor in that building?
There was a second floor and a third floor, which was, the rooms were rented out to staff that worked at Valley Forge.
So essentially that was
Yeah.
faculty housing occurring on the second and third floors?
Correct. Correct.
And obviously the cadets were the ones who were using the infirmary.
When they were ill, they would come over to the infirmary, and it was only the cadets staff,
There-
yes.
There were no treatment of patients who were off campus,
No.
who were outside individuals?
No, absolutely not, no.
And in terms of parking, for that building itself, for Sullivan Hall, did Sullivan Hall have its own parking lot near the building?
We did. As you pulled in off of Radnor Street Road, we drove up. Parking for Sullivan Hall, for the infirmary, was on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, there was parking for the houses that are right there in that area, the little parking lot.
Okay. So as far as the use of Sullivan Hall as the infirmary and also for the faculty residences on the second and third floor, was there any parking that was needed or used on the, what we'll call the main parking lot, the Sullivan Hall?
Sullivan Hall
I'm sorry,
parking
the
lot?
Sullivan parking lot?
No, not as far as people that were employed there, nursing and doctor staff, no. The large parking lot, Sullivan Hall parking lot, as I knew it then, as I know it now, was not, we did not park there.
Okay. And that would also apply to the other residences that were up in the northeastern portion of that, what has been known as or referred to as South Campus. Is that correct?
The 13 houses? that
Correct.
I don't know if any of the people that lived in that in those houses parked there or not. I don't know that. I know that that parking lot was used for different affairs that we had at Valley Forge, for some of the cadets who had cars there. Eastern and Cabrini sometimes used it as well.
Now, when you say Eastern and Cabrini used that parking lot, do you know what years that occurred?
I do not know.
Was it before the year 2000?
Yes. I can remember, yes.
And how often did Cabrini or Eastern utilize that main parking lot on that property?
I'm sorry, I don't know that. I don't know that.
Do you know if it was being utilized by those separate institutions for overflow parking purposes?
Yes, I did know that. On special occasions, I would see a vehicle down there from Eastern or Cabrini.
Maybe graduation?
Graduation affairs, some affairs like on a Sunday, things like that, I would see them down there too, but mostly during the week in special affairs, yes.
Okay. To your recollection, were those other institutions also using that main parking lot for regular parking of students?
I can't answer that question. No,
Okay.
no.
And how long were you working in the infirmary at Sullivan Hall? You said it was 1964 that you started, but how long did that go?
69, and then I came back in 83, 84 school year and stayed there until it was torn down.
And it was
And we moved over to the main campus.
Okay, so again, starting in 1984, it was torn down in the year 2000?
Correct.
So from 1984 until 2000, it was still being utilized as an infirmary.
Yes.
And did any of the students actually physically drive down to that location? Did they have to walk down to that location?
They walked across the street. I'm not sure. I can't be sure if some of them didn't park there and then come up and visit us on their way back, from being off leave or something like that. But most of them, it was always crossing over the Eagle Road to the infirmary.
But again, if there would be any parking, they would have been parking in the parking lot that was adjoining Sullivan Hall itself, the building itself.
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions of Ms. Eckert.
Mr. Rice, do you have any questions?
Just briefly, Ms. Eckert, in terms of parking on this site prior to 2000, you testified that you thought you saw, an occasional Cabrini or Eastern car there that was using that lot prior to 2000, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You weren't involved in any kind of permitting or issuance of parking permits or leases or anything? That wasn't in your department? You weren't involved in that? This is just your personal observation?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Now, how did you know a car was a Cabrini vehicle? A sticker on the window, or
Well,
somebody was wearing Cabrini's colors, or how would you know that Cabrini was using that lot?
I would see the Cabrini vehicle security parking, people like that come in and then stop and check cars that were parked there, so.
So the staff, the security
Right,
Cabrini
yes,
staff was on
yes.
the lot? Okay.
Right.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you. That's good? That's all?
Board have any questions of Ms.
No. Any questions of the board? No.
And again, I just requested A1 to A25.
Okay, very good. Okay, this time we're going to entertain the audience. I have two letters. Is Miss Blackney here? Okay, do you want to read your letter? Okay, and how about a Miss Wilson? Okay, and I'll read Miss Wilson's. It was turned into the Township building. It says, "Dear Zoning Hearing Board, I am a resident of the 200 block of Walnut Avenue in North Wayne. I am writing to ask that you grant the request of Eastern University to continue use of the property at Radnor Street Road and Walnut Avenue for parking. Now that Eastern is not allowing the use of the parking lot on that property, their students are parking along 200 block of Walnut Avenue. There are currently no posted parking restrictions on the 200 block of Walnut Avenue. We had this problem before Valor Forge Military Academy started leasing space in that same lot to Eastern University and Cabrini College. During that time, we experienced auto vandalism, increased noise and activity at late hours, and the inconvenience of not having parking available for residents or their guests. When we talked to the police, we were told that they couldn't request that the cars be moved until they had been parked in the same spot for several days, 10 days, if my memory is correct. Time-limited parking, i.e. 2 hours, 10 hours, etc., is not a suitable alternative, as many of the residents park their personal vehicles on the street, and this would cause them great inconvenience. If the area college students don't have ample parking, their cars won't simply go away. They will end up on our streets. That will create congestion, the increased potential of vehicle accidents, inconvenience to residents as well as the vehicle owners, and ultimately more calls to the police. Meanwhile, the parking lot at Walnut and Radnor Street stands empty. Please help us preserve the safety and character of our neighborhood. Sincerely, Candace W. Wilson.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'd object to that being read into the record for any facts stated in it, because the person is not here to verify, to authenticate, and she is not subject to being cross-examined by anybody or asked questions by the board. She's alleging all kinds of facts there, and she's not before us. I think it should not be part of the record, and we should pay no attention to it in our decision.
Jim?
I agree that it should be accorded, frankly, very little weight in light of her non-presence here. Whether it should be part of the record, I think the board can give it the weight that it deserves in light of her non-presence.
Pete?
It is signed.
Yes.
I have no problem with it being in the record.
I think it could be admitted into the record to show that this person supports the reopening of the lot, but I don't think it can be taken as evidence of any of the factual matters contained therein.
Okay, I kind of agree with John. I think that it kind of shows that there is someone that wants to keep it, but the facts is really is up in the air.
Right.
Unless someone else gets up and stands up and states the same facts.
You were expect to assume that certain college students are responsible for alleged acts of vandalism? I mean, I don't know what weight that has. Why should it be given any weight at all? If the person really feels strongly she should be here, and we should be able to ask her questions about where she gets these facts from.
Well,
She makes some pretty serious allegations there.
I'm not necessarily agreeing that you have to weigh the facts as what the facts are. I think it's more that there is someone thinks that we should have that should be there, should be left there. Whether you want to take the facts that she states for that reason, that's purely up to you.
Well, actually, I would agree with Noah that the only thing I think that could be admitted for is this person would support the reopening of the parking lot, period. But I don't think that I would advise the board not to take any notice of the factual allegations in there.
Okay. I would leave it in for my vote. Okay, great. Okay. Mrs. Blackney?
Yeah, my name is Barbara Kraus-Blackney, and I live at 211 Walnut Avenue. Is that it? Okay. And Candace is a neighbor of mine. I know she would be here if she could. She did have a conflict this evening. So perhaps if there's a continuation of this, she'll be able to read her letter herself. And mine will be a little bit redundant of hers, but dear Zoning Hearing Board, we are residents of the 200 block of Walnut Avenue. This is actually from my husband, Kevin Blackney, and myself, in North Wayne, and are writing to ask that you grant the request of Eastern University to continue to use the property at Radnor Street Road and Walnut Avenue for parking. Now that Eastern is not allowed to use the parking lot on the property, their students have begun parking on our block where there are currently no posted parking restrictions. This same situation occurred before Valley Forge Military Academy began leasing space in this lot to Eastern University and Cabrini College, which is why Eastern sought to lease the space from them in the first place. At least that's my understanding. Our opinion is, since Eastern has now acquired ownership of this property and the usage has not changed, that at a minimum it is reasonable to grandfather the previous use of the lot by Eastern for a reasonable period of time that allows the university to complete a well-thought-out master plan. We are encouraged that the university has shown a good faith effort to work with and be responsive to the community, having met with us several times and responding in a timely manner in writing to 99 questions that were submitted to them as the outcome of one of these meetings. We don't feel that restricted parking is a viable alternative, as not only would it inconvenience the residents, but also result in cost to the police using this precious resource in a wasteful manner, something that we can't afford any time, but certainly not at all in times of these of tightening budgets, and not only tightening budgets, but also an increase in residential burglaries, and I believe it's my understanding other crimes in our township. If Eastern is not allowed to use the lot as it has been used for the last several years, the cars won't simply go away, they will end up on our streets. That will create congestion, the increased potential for vehicular and, God forbid, pedestrian accidents, inconvenience to residents as well as those needing parking, and ultimately more demand on the police department, all while a perfectly usable, low-impact and long-existing parking lot stands empty. Thanks for your consideration, and please help us preserve the safety and character of our neighborhood. Thank
Any
you.
questions? Mr. Rice? Ms. Cornelia? Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Good evening. My name is Colleen Price. I believe I have to request party status because I would intervene in this action. I do here because I believe that Eastern's request should be denied.
I think we should have you sworn.
Can you sworn in, please?
Certainly.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And your address?
It's 352 Shimoni Road, St. David's, PA. I live right across the street from the parking lot. This is going to go a little out of order, so I'm going to start the way this began, and I have a couple of questions for Mr. Baumann.
Before the board entertains any statements or testimony from Ms. Price, I don't know if the board has ruled upon her request for party status at this point. If in fact she's asking for party status, I'd like an opportunity to question her for that basis, for that reason.
Yes? That's okay.
Okay. Ms. Price, where do you live in relation to this property, the 18 acres, which is the subject of this application?
If you go out of my house, you'd make a left, and it's a couple hundred feet up on the right.
Okay. And when did you acquire that property?
1998.
Okay. And you're here tonight, I take it, stating a position adverse to Eastern's request for continuing the use of this parking lot?
Actually, I started this request 3 years ago. I became before the Board of Commissioners and asked them to stop that commercial parking lot. So this has been a continuing complaint for the last 3 years.
Okay. And your complaint is essentially, I would take it, concerns with regard to Eastern's adherence to the ordinance regulations, Radnor Township?
And what's happened is Eastern has doubled in size in the last few years. They've intensified their use over at that parking lot. And what they do is they cut through my neighborhood, across my lawn. That's how they get back and forth, because they've been talking all about shuttles and vehicular access. There's no sidewalk. There's no pedestrian access route other than coming across my neighbor's property, my property, and then cutting through the park to get back to the main campus. And that intensified use has caused me to make these complaints.
Okay. And your concern is with regard to your enjoyment of the property? Of your
Absolutely.
own
It's a
property?
nuisance. It's a safety hazard. It's a public health, safety, welfare, general welfare. It's all the things you're trying to get under special exception. It violates every one of them.
Okay. So again, your concern is more generalized concerns with regard to...
No, it's very specific, because what's happened here is Eastern has intensified their use in the last few years. They've just rolled out a plan to spend another $50 million to put up an NCAA basketball arena, a concert hall, a student union, a classroom, all that use.
You have to state the relevancy of our problem here tonight. And
The
that's-
relevancy of the problem is if you
Yeah,
allow
but
them to
that's
use
not-
this.
Okay, but that's not, we're talking about the parking lot, not the gym and what they plan to do.
But those people who will go to the gym and all these new uses are going to use that parking lot. You won't have 47 students there, you'll have 350. And that's a very different use than what's been going on over there. And you'll have 350 people coming across my lawn every hour, on the hour, going to classes, coming home from the basketball arena. If they're permitted to use it for any reason as off-street parking, then that's what's going to happen here.
Now, Ms. Price, you understand that the nature of this proceeding is an enforcement proceeding that's been filed by the township?
Yes, but you've asked for a special exception, which gives me status to come in here as a party. This is not just, you got a parking ticket, it's none of my business. You're asking for a special exception.
But you understand that the township is representing an interest adverse to Easterns by virtue of the filing of the enforcement notice?
I'm sure they are, but they also need to hear from the residents regarding a special exception, invested rights, and your good faith efforts and your due diligence. That's things that the township is not aware of.
At this point, if it please the board, I would maintain an objection to Ms. Price's standing on the basis that the primary matter that's at issue here is an enforcement matter that's been filed by the township. The township is here representing the interests through Mr. Rice, and Ms. Price points out that the applicant has raised an additional issue of a special exception request in the alternative. That's stated in the form of alternative relief. But again, the primary basis of this action is an enforcement action, and I have submitted a memorandum of law to Mr. Ryan, which explains the case law that in light of the fact that essentially the issue that is presented before the board is an issue of enforcement of a zoning ordinance, and the township is here representing the interests of the township through its solicitor. I think the interests of the residents and the concerns for public health, safety, welfare are adequately represented by Mr. Rice on behalf of the township.
Okay. I'm not going to make a decision. I don't think the board will make a decision on the standing, but I will let Ms. Price talk because she is a neighbor and she does have an interest in it. And you know, if the students are walking across our lawn, you know, that's something that we should hear about. You know, and maybe that's maybe between Ms. Price and the schools, they could figure out some way to completely stop that issue as well. I mean, I know if it was my lawn, I wouldn't want 350 children running across it on a continuous basis. So.
Well, see, before we go on, can I ask Mr. Keneally a question? Nick, you're not dropping your special exception request, are you?
Yeah.
And you are not dropping any other requests you've made for relief?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just kindly note that
It's
Eastern
all still
joins.
open, so she has the right to talk.
Yeah, she has the right to talk.
Yeah, and just join.
And I
Just
deeply
Yeah, I mean,
resent
you
this.
you just kind of, all I ask you to do is stay with the issue about why the parking lot should not be there.
Well, wouldn't it be what the uses are going to be? If they can use this parking lot for any off-street reason, then you need to know what's going to happen next year. So I don't see how that isn't relevant if they've told you they're going to spend they have $50 million in the pipeline to add more people here.
It's relevant to your problem, but it's not relevant to the scope of this board's authority.
Right.
Okay.
We're considering a narrow issue, and the issue is, are they entitled to continue to use this parking lot because it's, they say, been historically used this way and no change has been made? You know, given the facts that have that have been brought out today. That's
what
our
I mean.
issue.
You kind of have to stay with the issue, because if you get off the issue, we can't rule on that. We can only rule what's in front of us. So,
And that's all
in order
speculative to
make-
us anyway. We don't know
Right.
if they're going to build a stadium there or an auditorium or
Well, they've
an
filed a
aquarium. We
plan.
don't know.
Okay, may I ask Matt Baumann about their plans? Please.
Just kindly note, I just want to note for the record that Eastern joins in the objection
Okay.
lodged by Valley Forge.
And as a neighbor, I have to say I deeply resent
The
that
town-
the institutions
something
are
to
trying
say,
to
David?
silence their neighbors.
Well,
Go ahead.
she obviously has standing.
We're not disputing that.
I mean, any resident that lives next to a property that there's an alleged ordinance violation has standing, separate from the special exception, so.
Yeah, I think also the
we're not-
Lauman
But that
case.
wasn't, that's not even,
But just so, we're making a record here.
Yes.
So the township believes that the residents have standing in this case. Any resident that lives in that vicinity obviously has standing,
Ms.
based on
Price,
what's been asked.
You said you live within 200 feet of this parking lot?
Yes.
There is a recent case, the Lauman decision, which says standing is presumed if you're within 400 to 600 feet. I can't speak to any other neighbors. They'd have to testify on their own. But I'd have a hard time saying that you do not have standing. I think under the law you have standing.
Okay.
Have you seen a copy of the brief filed by the intervener?
No, I haven't, and I'd
You
like
may
to
want to
see all
give
the
that to her.
plans.
She should have a chance to respond during the briefing period if she wants to
Okay.
argue her own case about her standing.
Go ahead, Ms. Price.
I had a couple of questions for Mr. Baumann, and it's regarding the PI zone. Mr. Baumann, there seem to be very special requirements for long-range plans, and I was going to direct you to Section 280-72.
Okay.
280-72, Section C2.
Okay.
Under that section, wasn't Eastern required to submit plans that detail the present physical plan of the institution, land uses on adjacent properties, and parking in and around the institution?
I'm just going to object. There's no relevance here.
I believe you've asked for vested rights, which means that your good faith and your due diligence is at stake here. So
I'm
talking about
objecting.
what
It's
you've
not
disclosed to
relevant.
the township, I think is relevant.
Okay. Go, Mr. Bowen.
Okay, so the question, Colleen, if I can, is you're asking me if that, are the requirements set forth and have they provided that?
Did they provide that in their 2008 five-year plan?
I need to see to.
There was a plan filed in 2011 that Matt has a copy of. That has already been submitted.
I'm asking if you did it prior to the purchase.
I would need to refresh my memory with the 2008.
Again, the relevance, please, of this.
The relevance is that Eastern did not disclose that they were using this lot.
We didn't
For
purchase the
off-street-
lot to 2010.
In 2006 and 2008, Eastern submitted five-year plans, and in neither instance.
I don't know if, you can help me on this one. I don't know that they would definitely necessarily know in 2006 or 2007 they're going to buy something in 2010.
No, that they were using this lot. They're trying to say this is a non-conforming lot. Everybody knew about it. We've been doing this since 1990. Everybody knows. They didn't tell the township they were doing it. If they were so sure that they had the right to use this,
I'm confused. They weren't telling the township they were doing what?
that they were using South Campus lot of Valley Forge for their off-street parking, and they were
For
required
47 cars?
for 150 is what they testified to the Board of Commissioners 3 years ago. 150 from Eastern. They didn't tell anybody, and they were required to do it under their plans, and they didn't tell anyone.
The plans talk about land owned by the university.
You know,
and what
I would have
plans
to
they
think
for it.
that would, long-range plans would be things that they own.
I'm asking Mr. Baumann if he could just look at that section. It says about parking in and around the institution and open space and other amenities.
Yeah, but that's not land he owned. It's not relevant to what we're doing here tonight. You have
I
to stay
was-
relevant. You have to stay relevant to the appeal that's in front of us. And that's about the parking, not what they said 4 or 5 years ago for land they didn't own.
But that's not what this section says. And again, I'm going to ask Matt Baumann if he could give me a decision. Maybe you can
Charlie,
defer that for later.
In the code section reference, it does say the present physical plan of the institution, and skipping down, location
parking.
and classification of all streets, internal driveways, parking lots.
Right.
Doesn't say they have to own them.
Well, it talks about physical plan.
A physical plan would be things that you own. Why would you have a physical plan of something you don't own?
And in and around the institution would be
If Ms.
That's what-
Price is
well, it says-
asking, did we state on the long-range development plan that we're parking in this lot, the answer is no.
But I'm not sure that the code clearly would have required it.
Right.
Okay.
But did we disclose it on
Okay.
that plan? Whether it's required or not, it was not disclosed.
And back to the questions you had before, when they were talking about if you had a building with one desk, would that be an academic purpose? Isn't it under the use regulations that it has to have a principal academic purpose? Not that you could have a building with one desk and then a 500-car parking lot. That wouldn't be principal academic use, would it?
Under 28068, -68 use regulations.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Colleen, could you repeat the question?
If I'm saying, in regards to that section, it says it's not, it has to have the lot has to have a principal academic use.
Yes.
That has to be the principal use of the lot. So if you had a building with one desk and one chair and a 500-car parking lot, what would be the principal use of that lot?
That would be the educational building, the building itself.
But would you have to have a correlation between, you'd have one parking space then for a building with one desk, or would you have a 500-car parking lot?
I mean, if they meet, again, if they meet the impervious coverage, and they could build as big a lot as they possibly could, they meet the parameters of that, but no, I don't see the necessity to build a 500-car lot for one desk, but maybe they might, they could be planning for future growth. That's hard to say, but yeah, I mean, that's the primary use, is a building with, let's say, a desk.
Right, and the principal use has to be academic.
That's correct.
Okay. When you asked Eastern about the parking over at the lot, didn't they say it was occasional and casual parking when you initially met with them?
I honestly, I don't recall that being mentioned. And was that in reference to a meeting at the Township building?
Yes.
I don't recall that being said.
Did they give you leases when you initially asked them about it?
No, I've never received leases.
Did you request information about the parking?
Yes,
And you didn't receive any leases till tonight?
correct, until Mr. Rice requested those.
Okay.
Matt, I could interject now, but you never requested Eastern provide you leases.
No,
When John requested the leases, we gave them to him.
Wait a minute. Let's,
I'm sorry.
questions and answers.
I'm sorry.
I don't think,
I'll withdraw the question.
you can object to her, you can object to some questions she's asking, but
No, I understand.
we have a
I just wanted to clarify what the facts were.
Who's talking here? Ms. Price, are you done?
I don't know if I'm up.
You're asking
Okay.
Matt questions.
All right, forgot what my question was. And Matt, under the law, a non-conforming use is something that had to exist lawfully, and then the law changes. Is that basically how non-conforming use works?
I would interpret that. I would agree with that.
So if Valley Forge is trying to say that they had a commercial parking lot, that would have to have existed in 1964, and then when the law changed, it was somehow grandfathered? Is that your interpretation?
Well, it depends. Again, I think, we're getting to a realm. I'm not sure if we clarified the exact year when the parking lot was built. I know we have documents with 1960 when aerial, and it's not. Then in 65, it is there, I believe. That was the exhibit. And then zoning for planned institution came into effect for this particular area, I believe, in July of 1965. So there's some time period there that needs further clarification.
But as
and
of
understanding.
1965, when the PI zoning came into effect on that property, would they be allowed to use that parking lot as an accessory use parking lot?
If it was originally zoned R1, or is it zoned PI?
It's zoned PI. If it's zoned PI, can they use that as accessory parking lot?
Valley Forge, yes, in my opinion, yes.
And that would be conforming?
That would be conforming, correct.
If this parking lot gets approved as a non-conforming lot, can't they increase it by 50%, the non-conforming use?
If we look into section 280-101, I believe that's, bear with me. That would be under 280-101, A, 2, and then B, the area devoted to the nonconforming use shall in no case be increased by more than 50%. But I have to, preceding that's the paragraph, if I may read that, the nonconforming use of a building, again, this is building, shall not be extended or enlarged. Let me further go into this. And a nonconforming building shall not be extended or structurally altered except insofar as required by law to assure the structural safety of the building, unless the zoning hearing board shall, as a special exception, authorize the extension of a nonconforming use of a portion of a building throughout the building or the limited extension of a building on a lot. So I think with this particular section, they're talking about a building, but the preceding paragraph in 1, when they're talking about a nonconforming use, that would be applicable to that section. So I think what they're talking about here in this section is the intention of if they had a nonconforming building with respect to dimensional criteria, they would be able to expand that.
C might come into play a little bit too, Matt.
Any extension
That's about lot, that's the nonconforming lots.
Oh, I'm sorry. With furthermore, okay. And then nonconforming lots, a lot held in single.
Yeah.
A lot of issues, that doesn't.
Yeah,
have
but
to
I
do-
mean,
Right.
she's worried about, could they increase it? Could they increase the size of the lot?
Yeah,
And the
that's-
dimensionals would come into play.
I think it's increase the size of
But
the
again, of what
The
relevance
parking.
is the fact that they can or cannot expand it in the future? The issue before us is, can they now presently use it legally for this purpose?
I think because, again, they're looking for a special exception. You need to know what the impact is on the size of the
But they're
parking
not
and the
asking for a
uses.
right to expand. They're saying, the township has told them that they may not continue to use this for parking. And they're saying, yes, we can, and they've made some allegations. What happens in the future isn't in front of us now. If they want to expand it at some time and you want to contest that, you'll be free to do that. But that's not before us right now.
Okay. Matt, are you aware of any plans that Eastern has to add new buildings on their main campus?
Yes, I am.
My question for that...
It doesn't, Ms. Price, please, we're talking about the parking lot. This board's not going to entertain any more talk about building in the future. I don't think it's relevant to what's happening tonight, and that's their request to use this lot as a parking lot.
For 350 students is what you're going to approve then,
It
for
has
any use from the main campus?
But it only has 307 slots.
It has 350.
Well,
according to-
that's up for, someone will, over time, will go out and decide that.
Okay.
The security of one says it's 307, someone else says by air. He counted it from a photo. He didn't physically walk the lot. So the number of parking spots on a lot is not of relevance right now. You know, it's whether they can use that lot for parking. And that's what's in front of this board. Not that they're gonna make it bigger, not that they're gonna build more buildings on their lot. So please, stay with you know,
I will,
that
but
in
they
mind.
testified that they have 47 people there. I don't want you to walk around with the impression that there are
You know,
47
it's
people.
not-
You have to
we understand.
assume
It wouldn't
it's
make any
three.
difference to us if it were 47 or 87 or 100. It's
Okay.
today, can they or can they not
It's the
continue
The
to
lot
use
as
this
it
parking?
exists now, can
So
they
you
use
need to
this
stay,
lot?
you need to stay focused on the use. If you
Okay.
have any more to say, please.
I'm just, can they use that parking lot calculation for any buildings on the main campus?
No, they cannot.
Okay. Then I have questions for Eastern, if I could recall their witness.
Just as long as you stay within the realm of, are you gonna build more buildings? Okay?
Well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
part of a special exception is access routes, it's safety, it's health, it's welfare. You have to ask those questions, or they have to remove it as
No,
their request.
we're talking about whether they want to continue to use the lot as they are presently using it.
They're presently using it for 47 students. If that's what they
Well,
want,
we're not, you know, we're not talking, it's a use thing. It's not a numbers thing right now. It's a use thing. Can they use it for a lot? Whether they put one there or they put all, you know, all the spots there that we're not sure they are. So you need to stay in that scope, please, Ms. Price.
I guess I put an objection on the record because I don't think that's what a special exception, it goes beyond those parameters.
But the special exception is as an alternative.
It's a request.
Well, but remember, they're asking on multiple theories, and, you know, including that it's permitted under the zoning code, that they're entitled to some sort of non-conforming use or vested right or a special exception, but it all comes to the same thing. We want to be able to use this lot. So unfortunately, the only thing the zoning board has before it is this lot, and the fact that they might come back or try to do something else beyond the scope of that in the future, maybe or may not, it's unfortunate, it just isn't within our jurisdiction. The question is, can they go back to using this lot? And I'm afraid that's all that's before the board and all the board can entertain.
Well, again, I'm going to repeat my objection. I think a special exception takes into a broader consideration. So it's noted.
Just as long as you don't bring it up in the questions you're going to ask.
I'm not. I'm going to ask Carl, I forgot your last name.
Altamere.
Altamere. Mr. Altamere, before you bought this lot, did you get a zoning certification from the township?
I'm not aware of any zoning certification. That was taken care of by our internal counsel, all of the events leading up to the sale.
Were you aware of any correspondence from me to Eastern or your trustees?
Recently, I reviewed it, but again, all that correspondence was taken care of by the internal counsel and Nick prior to the sale.
So you weren't aware that there were zoning issues that neighbors had brought up to Eastern prior to the sale? Or you are aware now, is that what you're saying?
I'm aware of the existence of those letters and that correspondence now, yes, that's correct.
And in your review, you don't see any indication that you went to the township and asked them to say that this is a non-conforming parking lot?
I wasn't involved in that transaction at all. The internal counsel took care of that, and all those investigations were done by him.
Okay, you heard your attorney testify regarding the long-term plans. It looks like you prepared the long-term plans, the 2006, 2008 long-term plans. Eastern's long-term plans, your card is attached.
Yeah, I dropped it off. That it was updated by me, but it wasn't written by me.
Okay, and you did never disclose that you were using the parking lot over at South Campus?
That is not in that record.
Okay.
You need to stay away from the wrong range plans, please.
How do your students, you testified that you have an on-call shuttle, but you have to call to get it. How do students walk back and forth from from South Campus to the main campus?
Typically, they would walk down Walnut Lane and through the park or through Fenimore Lane into the gymnasium. That would be the typical easiest route.
Oh, aren't they not allowed to go into the park after dusk?
There is a dusk to dawn exception in the park, and I do not know. I have not witnessed them walking in there in the dark.
Are there any sidewalks on Walnut for them to walk on?
I'm not aware of any, and I don't believe there is any. That is correct.
Are there any on Fenimore if they come?
No, there is not.
Would you put sidewalks on Eagle to help the students get from one part of your campus to the main campus, from the South Campus to?
That is not in our long-range plan.
Why isn't that in your long-range plan?
You need to kind of stay with the parking lot.
I am, but
Okay,
how you
but they've
they
been
don't fly from the parking lot. How do you get from the parking lot to the main campus? I think that's a relevant question.
But your pending question was why they didn't include sidewalks, and that question is not relevant.
Doesn't your vice president live on Eagle Road?
It's not relevant either.
Okay. Do you have any issues about not allowing your students to walk through residential neighborhoods after hours? After 1 o'clock in the morning? Do you have a security shuttle that goes out to make sure that they're not coming from the parking lot and coming to the main campus through a residential neighborhood after midnight?
I don't think they can control that. Where people are, at various times of the night, I don't think either the university or the township can say that you have to be in the university campus by a curfew. I mean, these are college students. They're over 18.
That's my point exactly, and that's been my argument that I will state at the end, that that's what I get at 1 o'clock in the morning. Because Eastern has intensified their use, you have the parking lot use over here, the main campus over here, and 1 o'clock in the morning, we have students coming through disrupting a residential neighborhood.
That is something you should really take up with the university. I mean,
I haven't,
Okay.
and they just won't budge.
I'm just going to point out that there's 3 institutions in this area, and not
to defame Cabrini, Eastern, or Valley Forge. Remember, there's 3 institutions. There's no proof as to who these students are from.
Well,
But I
the
think
proof
it
is
is,
they're going to
I think
Eastern.
it is relevant to part of your application that she, as an immediate neighbor, is experiencing a health, safety, and welfare problem. She's letting us know that. That's a fact. The cause of that remains to be determined, but no, I think it's relevant that you're experiencing that problem.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing is that we kind of come up with some solution to help her. And if, you know, if the board decides that the lot stays or goes or whatever it decides, you know, I really believe that someone should help this lady so that the students aren't walking through her lot, through her house. I mean, I can empathize with that. What else?
Do you have any academic purpose on that lot? Are there any educational buildings on South Campus?
On our West Campus, no.
Okay. And you rent houses there to Valley Forge's faculty?
The Valley Forge community occupies those homes.
So that is just a rental operation? You just rent the house?
No, we don't rent them ourselves. They're not rented out by Eastern University.
Well, how are the people in the houses? What kind of arrangement do you have?
We have a lease agreement with Valley Forge that allows them to use the homes as they were used prior to us purchasing the property.
So you're essentially leasing it to people and collecting some sort of payment?
I'm not sure.
That was that's part of it. And if you notice in the agreement, there is no rental payment between Valley Forge and Eastern for these homes. It was just part of the whole deal that Valley Forge could continue using those homes for their faculty.
Was there any value given for that in the deal? In any form,
Yeah,
capital or?
no value at $10, I think, in the agreement. Nominal consideration it was given.
I'm sure the purchase price was probably reduced for that.
I wasn't part of
I
the
mean,
negotiation.
don't
No, I
strain
know.
credibility.
Yeah,
Then.
I was
Obviously, something has about figured in the deal.
No, I was not part of the transaction, so I don't know. But obviously,
And the man you have to testify has no personal knowledge of it. So basically, we have no source of information on that.
Other than the fact that this is a separate uses of a rental property in an institutional zone?
We're just merely continuing the uses that were on the property prior to us purchasing. The same folks that were in the homes are in the homes now.
Do you pay any taxes on that lot for South Campus? I call it South Campus, they call it.
You know, this is you need to get some reasons why they should not keep that thing as a parking lot. You're kind of all over the place. You know, and we'll
Well,
be
they've
here
got a
till
double
tomorrow.
use there. That's what I'm trying to
Well, no,
explain, that they
it's-
have.
It's, you know, we're talking about the parking lot. Okay, where they want to use the parking lot, continue to use that lot as they've been using it, you know, since 1961.
Well, that'd be a
whatever.
great question. Have you been using that lot since 1961?
No, but the lot's been used as a parking lot since 1961.
I'd like to know, has Eastern, have you been using that lot since 1961?
I'm not aware of our records going back that far.
Have you been using it in 1985, do you think?
The earliest I'm aware of in writing is 2004. Verbally, I understand it was 2002.
Okay, so based on your testimony, this has not been a long-term agreement that you've been using this lot. It's just been in the last 7 years?
In my knowledge, 2002 verbally is the first time that I'm aware that we used the lot.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have any other
Doesn't mean
questions.
it didn't happen, but in my knowledge.
I think it didn't happen, but that's, okay.
Okay. You done?
Can I ask a question now? Valley Forges?
As long as we're staying on message,
I'm
please.
doing my best.
Well,
I'm trying.
You need to try a little
You
harder.
wait till they keep you up 1 in the morning. You see what you get.
Just not the same questions.
Okay. And it's Mr.
Geiling.
Geiling.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Geiling, you got 2 letters from the township requesting information about any nonconformities on the lot. Isn't that true?
I recall one letter last year. Second letter we did receive, if you're regarding to the one that we received, I believe, is August, September timeframe of this
Well,
year.
and
Or,
you
I'm
did-
sorry, of 2010.
You got a letter in February that asked you if there were any nonconformities on this lot.
I did receive a letter addressed directly to me.
And you
Second
did not
letter-
respond to that letter in
That's
February?
correct, yes.
And, but you're claiming now that the parking lot is a nonconforming use?
I'm not claiming anything.
Okay. Is Valley Forge claiming that this is a non-conforming lot? Isn't that the essence of the application?
No help for the peanut gallery, please.
Didn't you initially use this parking area as a parade ground?
Can you define parade ground?
I believe the neighbors will testify that this was not a parking lot, that it was used for parade purposes to come out and practice for the band. Is that the initial use?
I
It
think
was
there's a
used to
picture that
train.
says, in 61, it actually says the parking lot was used as a parade. So,
Okay.
yeah, but I mean, I think they use it as a parking lot and a parade ground. I mean,
Well,
you know,
he would
things
have
do
to
have dual
testify.
purposes.
To that, because, well, let me ask you
61?
some more questions on that.
Yeah.
Wasn't it originally used as a parade ground, not as a parking lot?
No, in fact, this specifically says, the new cadets are instructed in school soldiering on the new and spacious Sullivan parking area.
Right,
So back in 61, it was a parking area.
okay. In 61, when it was a parking area, didn't you add a new building called Price Hall at the same time
To
period?
which parcel of land?
To the main building, and you added a building that would have required parking for about 150 spaces. It says it's built in 1962 in memory of Lieutenant General William G. Price, Jr.
Where are we talking about, on this site or a different site?
We're talking about this site that was used collectively as one site. Did
No,
you have-
okay, I'm sorry.
You need to be talking about the 18.1 acres. Anything that's built off those 18.1 acres is irrelevant.
I don't think it's irrelevant if they were using this as one integral unit, which they have testified to the Radnor
It's-
Township, to the Delaware County Planning Commission. They have used the parking calculations
think
to
it's
get all their
60.
zoning
That's
requirements.
over here, right? Yeah.
Did you build Price Hall in 1962?
I didn't.
Were you aware of anyone who built that when Price Hall was built?
Roughly around that time.
And didn't it have capacity for 1,500 spectators?
No, ma'am, I believe it's less than that.
This
Would
is
you like to see-
this is irrelevant. I mean, do you have anything else to add? Do you have any questions relevant to the parking lot?
I believe establishing the uses
Okay, well,
is relevant
all
to
right.
the parking lot.
Do you have anything relevant about the parking lot?
Do you have any permits that permitted this parking lot to be built?
I do not.
Do you have any grading permits?
Yeah, you know what, this is, it's been there a long time.
Okay. Do you know if people from Sullivan Hall park there?
In the South Campus parking lot?
Yes.
I do not know.
Do you know if Valley Forge used that parking lot for its accessory uses?
I do not know.
You don't know if anyone from Valley Forge ever parked in South Campus parking lot?
Cadet, sure, yes, absolutely.
You didn't have any events
Faculty.
there? That the Bob Hope event?
What does this have to do with?
I'm trying to
We-
establish that
we
Valley,
know, all you're establishing is, yeah, it was used as a parking lot.
as an accessory use parking lot for Valley Forge Military Academy. That's what it was used for.
That's still up for this board to decide.
And they need to have testimony, say how
No,
it was
we-
used, or they
we've-
can't make that
But, yeah,
determination.
you've made whatever point you think you've made.
Okay. In 1997, Valley Forge filed a letter with Radnor Township stating what their parking availability was. And I'd like to show that to you and to Nick. And I'd give a copy to you as well.
What are we going to call this one, John?
I guess this would be
Thank you.
P1.
P1? What about these letters? What do you want to call them?
And if you look at the last page of P1, you
Could
have...
just for a
One second.
second, I would make them IP1 and IP2 for interested party.
Okay. Go ahead.
And if you look at page 7 of that exhibit, you have Sullivan Hall parking lot calculated as your available parking for your uses. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the number?
On page 7 of 8, you have Sullivan Hall parking lot. You have 308 spaces listed there and included as your available parking for your zoning purposes. Is that
No,
correct?
it's saying 306, but I think that's what you meant to
Yeah,
say.
I gotta have my glasses on.
I-
Okay.
Just, to the extent you're saying, it sounds to me like you're saying that by selling the lot to Eastern, they placed the Valley Forge buildings out of compliance because they needed that parking to support the buildings. Is that basically what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that this was a permitted conforming use as an accessory parking lot to Valley Forge, that by reputation, by use, by what everybody saw as township residents, this was Valley Forge's parking lot. This was never a commercial parking lot that anyone expected to be, continue to be used as a commercial parking lot. And that's how it's been proffered to the Delaware County Planning Commission, to Radnor Township, that this is our accessory parking lot.
Maybe we can cut to the chase on this issue. Is anybody saying that at least prior to this sale, that this was not an accessory parking lot to Valley Forge's campus? Is there anybody here saying that? No. Can we say that that's agreed to? You don't have to go into this. It was an accessory parking lot to Valley Forge's use prior to this sale.
Okay.
The real question is, what has the sale and subsequent events and these leases or license agreements have to do with anything? But no one says it wasn't that.
Then I would ask you, are you saying that it's a commercial parking lot?
Can you be more specific?
I don't think that's a fair question. We have to reach our own conclusion based upon the facts. If based upon the arrangements, we believe it's a commercial parking lot and that has some relevance, we'll give it the relevance it's entitled to. The facts are out. We know that it's being leased. We know that money is being paid for it.
Okay.
Whether they call that commercial or not really is not important.
Okay. I guess that's,
Are you done?
no, I mean, I guess I want to do a summary, if that's okay?
Short, right?
Sure, well.
Don't talk about the future,
And I'd be happy to-
please.
It needs to be short and it needs to be current.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Price, are you done with this witness?
Yes, I am. I just wanted to say that, a standalone parking lot is not permitted use in a PI zone. It never was. If this is going to be a non-conforming use, it had to have lawfully existed. So either under R1 at some point you could run a commercial parking lot, which has never been in our code, or somehow in P1 you can do a commercial parking lot, which again is not in our code. You can have a commercial parking lot, and it's in certain designated areas in our commercial parking lot zone, not in PI. I think there's a case that's on point. It's called the Appeal of Yoakum, where essentially the same thing happened here. They had a boarding house, they had two parking lots. They knocked down the boarding house and then said, poof, this is a public parking lot, this is a commercial parking lot. And the Pennsylvania Superior Court shot that one down. I have cited that in documents that I will give to you. And again, Eastern bears the burden here of establishing a non-conforming use. They don't have any permits, any evidence that there was a commercial parking lot in use before 1965, and Mr. Baumann has testified in 1965 that became a conforming lot. And that's my final. A special exception here would devastate the surrounding residential neighborhood. I think I've made my point. They have no way to get there without cutting through our neighborhood and taking over our park. If 300 people or 500 people or a 3-story parking garage is there and they're allowed to connect the main campus to the west campus through that park, the park is done, and it's not a park purpose to have it become a campus pathway. And it would absolutely kill our residential neighborhood. And again, if they're coming in claiming that they have some sort of vested rights, I think their good faith and their due diligence is relevant. They did not ask the zoning officer for a zoning certification. It was that easy to find out if this was going to be permissible. They didn't do it because they knew the answer and they were afraid to look for it. And I believe that Eastern should be denied any relief under the doctrine of unclean hands. I believe that they are required in their 2006 and 2008 long-term plans to talk about parking. They did not. And I think that goes to their credibility and their good faith and how they should be treated in this regard. Thank you very much.
You're going to hand some things up, you said?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Will you be filing a brief on this issue involving the Oakham case?
And I would like to see their brief and also a lot of their plans because according to their document here in 1997, they said that parking lot was grass. So I'd like to see some of the...
Ms. Price, I can give you copies, because I
of all
have
those
them,
maps.
of the memorandum of law submitted by Eastern and the memorandum of law and standing submitted by Valley Forge. Those are the only memoranda of law of which I am aware kicking around. I can give you copies of those because I ran some.
And if you're going to hand something in, we need it for the record.
Yeah, can you move everything in as exhibits?
Yeah,
to
well,
that
I need
point?
them. I only have one. You only gave me one. You need more than one. Does anyone have, do you have anyone have questions of her? Of Ms. Price? No, that's what she says more. She said. Mr. Rice, do you have any questions of Ms. Price? Anyone else in the audience have relevant comments that have not been covered? Quick.
Comment.
I
Renee
I
Melvin.
love quick. Thank you.
Renee Melvin, 227 Walnut Avenue. Renee Melvin, Melvin, 227 Walnut Avenue. The concern, the main concern, the reason I'm here, the cars, I have photos. The cars are parked right in front of my home.
Just interrupt for just a second. We're having an exhibit being handed up. This will be P2.
P2.
Is that it?
That's all you have, Ms. Price? Just this one?
IP1, wasn't it?
No, we have P1, and then
P1
this
is
is
the
P, this,
is the Valley Forge Military College,
Okay.
right? And P2 is the last one.
IP, is that what it's called?
No, this is P2. IP is the two letters. Okay? Which one is that? The ones you just had, that's P2. P2.
Okay, this is Colleen's memo, P2.
Yep, P2.
Yes, and P3 is the letter to Valley Forge, which we're talking about.
And this is P3. All right, so you have three of them, correct? Okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The reason I'm here is the parking is actually taking place in front of my home at 227 Walnut Avenue. It has for the past several years. They've been parked in front of our home for days at a time. They're the cars that have been referenced to by Candace Wilson and Barbara Blackney. We talked to the police. We found out that they were the students that were parking there, and there was nothing we could do because there was a 10-day limit for them. And what Candace was referring to in her letter was a situation that occurred last year. There were 5 cars that one evening parked outside of our home. They would come and go during the night, waking us up, and we heard a smash, and it turned out that someone pulled up, hit the back of one of the cars, intentionally targeted this very nice Mercedes sports car that was parked in front of our home. And we called the police, and the poor young kid came to the house and, tried to get more information, which we had nothing to give them because it happened at, we were asleep when it occurred. My point is, the parking lot's going to be a quick fix. The university really Eastern needs to be able to accommodate parking for their students on their campus. They should build a 2-car garage. They shouldn't spill out into our neighborhood. I think this parking, the lot will temporarily take care of things, but I don't think long-term it's going to be the answer when it continues to grow and the campus continues to grow. And I feel that, the residents, it's happening to all the neighbors. It's happening to all the surrounding neighbors. So that's all I have to say. Here's the photo. Do you want it? Photo? Show?
Yeah, we'll make that. Are you for or against the parking lot? I mean, I need to know if you're a P or an IP.
I think I'm really not for the parking lot. I think it's a quick fix. I don't think it's a lot. I think they need to take care of it on campus.
Well, more precisely, should we uphold the township and closing down the parking lot? Is that what you're asking, what you would ask us to do?
Well, I realize that would not.
Make that worse.
Right. So I understand what
become long-term.
everyone's trying to, but I think they should be held accountable for the students. And one of the young ladies, so I saw these 2 cars pull up. I didn't catch the first 2, the third. I happened to speak with her. She was a junior. She was not a freshman. And I was concerned about that because she said she could not get a parking pass. I have her license plate, so you can talk with her. I didn't get her name. I did get a photo of her license plate.
We don't have jurisdiction over that, ma'am. We
Can't do that.
No, I know.
We may
Well,
have sympathy for the
No, I'm just
situation,
stating,
but,
they mentioned that the freshmen don't have parking. She was a junior, and she was not able to get a
but I
parking
mean, whether the
pass.
university should be responsible for what their students do off campus or is not something we could deal with even if we wanted to. It's just not in
No,
our
I'm just trying to
portfolio.
Right. It's
state
not
that
just
she's not
freshmen.
able,
It's
right, it's
upper
not
freshmen
freshman,
as
it's
well.
not freshman. It's the junior that she was very frustrated. She said commuters are receiving the passes, the parking passes, and she was not able to get one. So I think they should be able to accommodate parking on campus. So I don't think this lot, I'm opposed to the lot. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? New information? I don't need the Eastern. And I don't want the license either. I don't want the license either. That's the next thing.
Good evening. My name is Christina Perrone, and that's Perrone, and Christina, CH. And I live at 234 Walnut Avenue, which is right across the street from this lot. I have a question. Okay, Matt's not here right now. And I would like, I forgot the term, that standing. I would like whatever that's
No,
called.
you
You
live
should
close
be
enough.
appear as you want to be a
Okay.
party to these proceedings.
I thought I had to ask for it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you should be, Mrs. Barone, you should be sworn in and
Oh.
give your name and address.
You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
And just please note my objection to standing on the record.
Okay.
It is, thank you. So much. It is my understanding that not only are the Eastern and Valley folks, the Valley Forge people, saying that they are entitled to use that parking lot as a parking lot and disagreeing with the township, but they are also asking for this board to grant them the right to, if that didn't work, they're saying, can you also grant us the right to use this as a special exception as a parking lot? And what I would like to speak to, if you say this is correct, I'd like to speak to the fact that it's my understanding that they've asked for vested right, which my understanding of vested right is that they had to actually acquire a permit, that they had to go through due diligence and good faith, that they had an expenditure of unrecoverable funds and inadequate public interest to divest the right, meaning that if these requirements were met, then potentially they may have a vested right. And what I would like to establish in my documents and testimony is that they never did go through the process of adequately establishing that, and their good faith was actually very poor faith. But I would have to present documents stating this as to why I believe they had bad faith, and therefore, if they had bad faith, why you should not consider giving them a special exception. May I present those facts and those documents?
I think so.
Yeah.
The long special exceptions in front of us, sure.
Thank you. I personally came before the Board of Commissioners approximately a year ago, and that is because about a year ago, my husband and I were planning to buy this property at 234 Walnut Avenue, and we had put down good faith money to buy this property, and had heard rumors that potentially Valley Forge was selling this lot to Eastern, and came before the Board of Commissioners on multiple occasions saying, what is the information, and what are they allowed to use this property for, and what would happen? I think, well, do I have to establish that that's true by asking Matt if that happened?
No, you can testify as
I
to
could
what
just
you-
testify
you
that
did.
that's true? Okay.
Ms. Byrne, what we're worried about is signed statements, being,
Okay.
admitted into evidence without a signature.
Okay.
That was what the concern was.
Got it.
And would make us look very bad in media for any
Got
of
it.
our cases that were reviewed if we're doing that.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So, I had a very huge interest in what was going to happen to this property because I was at the point of purchasing the property. So what was going to happen to it impacted the decision my husband and I were going to make about this purchase. During this time, we felt very strongly, we being the collective new neighbors that I was going to become part of this neighborhood, felt very strongly that we needed to give Eastern and Valley Forge the opportunity prior to the sale going through to put forth all the data and to be very open and transparent. So, as a result of that, I went to many township meetings, and I would like to enter into evidence a letter that Colleen Price, who is a neighbor and a friend, crafted and sent to Eastern University Board of Trustees, basically doing what we said, where we wanted to let the Board of Trustees of Eastern and the Board of Trustees of Valley Forge know that they were going to be in violation, in our opinion, as neighbors, prior to the sale going through, that they would have full knowledge that they were not allowed to use this lot as just a parking lot, so that they couldn't come before this board and waste the board's time and the township's time and the residents' time to come back later and do exactly what they're doing. So we said up front, let's establish good faith and put them on notice so that nobody was going to do this later and claim that they didn't get that. So I'd like to put that.
Excuse me a second. Was Ms. Price sworn? Colleen Price, was she sworn?
Yes.
Will you authenticate this letter before it goes on the record, please? Since you're the author.
Yes, I'm the author of this letter. It's dated February 9th, 2009, should be 2010. And the second letter that she has is dated March.
It was actually dated February 8th. She doesn't have her glasses on.
And another letter that she has here, I also wrote that one, and I believe it's dated March 9th.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that whoever's speaking is speaking into a microphone.
Okay.
I do have copies, but I didn't have them collated. I will give everybody copies.
And I'll authenticate your exhibit number 6, which is dated March.
March 9th,
March 9th. There
2010.
you go. Thank you.
So I have two letters that I would like to put forth as evidence, which the first letter, as I said, was Eastern University Board of Trustees, listing the specific issue to alert them in advance and prior to the sale that this purchase was going to cause a non-conforming situation. So I can get that clean. I was
Excuse
very
me.
prepared to do something different, and now I realize that I don't want to waste your time doing other things, so.
You need-
And we appreciate that.
Okay, so I'm just not as organized.
So what is this you're getting us?
This is the letter to Eastern. And I have multiple copies, but if I could just go through this once and then give you the multiple copies.
Well, yeah, could you just read it then, since we don't have it in front of us?
Sure.
Just read it out loud to us.
Or maybe Mr. Ryan can read it.
Well, pardon me? Well, I think that the question is not signing it now, it's authenticating. I think we need to, I would ask Ms. Price to come up because we had a lot of problem with people not talking, people talking at the same time. Is this exhibit number 3, which, if you could take it to the microphone.
It's going to be marked P6.
P6.
Yes, I'll authenticate P6, and I'm actually going to sign it.
Okay. You sent this letter.
I sent this letter.
On February.
February 8th, 2010.
Okay.
Shall I read it?
That's fine.
Dear trustee, this is to Eastern University Board of Trustees. dated February 8th, 2010. As you're aware, Eastern University seeks to purchase 18 acres, commonly known as the South Campus, from Valley Forge Military Academy for use as a theater or recreational center and for faculty housing. As a member of Eastern University Board of Trustees, you will be asked to review, assess, and ultimately approve this transaction. I, along with my fellow members of the North Wayne St. David's Defense Committee, have serious concerns that Eastern's expansion may conflict with Radnor Township zoning ordinances and may be unworkable with our residential neighborhood. The development of South Campus, which will result in a split campus on non-contiguous lots, presents a unique situation that may have unintended consequences. We would like to meet with you to discuss the development and give you some facts to help you make an informed decision. Given that the purchase is imminent, we respectfully request an immediate response. If we do not hear from you on or before February 17th, 2010, we shall retain outside counsel to handle our concerns. Thank you for your consideration. Very truly yours, Colleen Price. I would like to enter this in, please.
This will be P.
You can take. Continuing along those lines.
P6, do you want to mark it up?
Of advance notice. Colleen Price again, and I won't read this entire notice, but she wrote a letter, again dated March 9th, 2010, to Radnor Township, and carbon copied Valley Forge Military Academy trustees, Eastern University trustees, Dr. David Black of Eastern University, president, and Jim Rogers, who is the vice president of Eastern University. It goes through, it's a 3-page letter with very detailed, specific reasons as to why this property used as a parking lot and this particular use is not conforming, as what Mr. Rice has established, is not conforming with the township rules. Again, our goal was not to muddy the waters in terms of that we hate institutions. It was to establish in advance of their purchase so that they would not come here and waste your time, waste my time, waste our time, and say, hey, give me a special exception. Oops, it's always been done this way. We knew they were going to come and do that because this has sort of been their history, and so we tried to preempt that. We said, please, don't do this. Just follow the law. Follow the law. I will get a nice, clean copy of this one, which I'd like to enter into evidence. And I would like to specifically note the special exception that was part of this letter. There's one line I'd like to read specifically in the special exception appeal that's been entered into evidence. It says...
Just 1 second.
Yep.
Ms. Price, did you, can you come up and just, did you send this letter on the date stated?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and so this is a letter that you can authenticate?
Yes, I can authenticate it, and I will sign it as well.
Wait, don't sign this one.
Oh.
I have a nice, clean copy. Number
I'll sign it
6.
later,
Okay. Okay. So, just reading from that particular exhibit, she specifically outlines this special exception, and she states, as you will see in the attached special exception, the board's approval is limited to 50 cadets living on site. So this is talking about what use was permitted with that 53 exception.
I'm going to have to say the writing speaks for itself. She's talking about the 1953 special exception, not what we're talking about
I'm sorry,
here this evening.
it's actually really relevant. It says, it expressly understood that any change of use or any new construction requires further approval of the board. So I would ask Matt, did Valley Forge ever come forth to Radnor Township to ask for any special exception to use a 350 space parking lot as a primary use?
No, they did not.
Okay, so what I'm establishing here is that they were in violation of this 1953 special
I'm
exception.
gonna object.
But it changed in 65 for PI, so they became conforming in 65. So this is really, all this is saying is that it's been a parking lot since what you're saying.
But as PI, when the purchase was going through, and that's why we were bringing it up, what we were saying is that once we split it off, and they made this
But it's
no
still
longer
P-
part of Valley
Yeah,
Forge.
but it's still zoned PI.
It's zone PI, but in PI, you can't just have a separate parking lot. That's my point.
Well,
In
I mean,
PI.
that's what
That
that's
is
one of the
what we're
issues
trying to
before us.
decide.
That's one of the
Okay,
issues.
I mean, that's what our decision's for. It's not, so what you're saying is not relevant to what we have to do right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
It's like Ms. Pierce, you need to stay
On topic.
On topic,
Okay.
today's topic, not yesterday's or
Okay.
tomorrow's.
But can I just go back to the point that in PI, as a separate parking lot, as just a parking lot,
Well,
can
but-
I ask Matt, is that a permitted use
Well,
as a separate parking lot?
there's other issues relative to that. It's
been
been
asked.
asked.
And he said it's not. Okay, got it.
Remember, I asked everybody, you need to, you have time to talk, but you need to talk new. You can't
Okay,
talk
got new.
what three
Got
other
it.
people have already talked
Got
about.
it.
Because we'll be here till,
No, we don't want to do that.
no, we're going to be here when you're done, we're done.
And you
Okay,
can
got
say
it.
that you adopt or support the testimony that's gone before you, and add that to your own if you want, just by saying.
I adopt what Matt said regarding the questions that Mr. Rice.
Okay,
That's what
fine.
I support.
Okay.
But what I would like to establish here with this exhibit that I'm going to bring forth is that, again, we gave very detailed reasons as to why they should not go forward with this
Okay,
sale.
well, and
So
they
that,
didn't pay
let me
attention
give
to
you
you.
that,
That's,
because that goes to the vested interest issue. And here is that exhibit.
and I'm short one, right? All right, this is P7. Yes.
Unfortunately, without having copies of these things, how are we supposed to give consideration to all this? When are we going to?
Matt's going to get us all copies.
Have a complete record of them. Yeah,
No,
so-
Matt's going to get us all copies.
Yeah, I think.
It's hard to keep track.
He's going to take everything that's new and get us copies.
Yeah, I think the board has gotten a copy, a full set of copies of the applicants of Eastern's
Right.
exhibits.
And-
But we don't have a complete set of copies of the townships, we don't have the IPs, and we don't have a complete set of copies. No, in terms of the copying that Matt has to do to get to the other board
Right,
members.
yes, we need to,
got a complete set.
we have,
Yeah.
the record has a complete set, and Matt's going to have to make a complete set of records. Or the only thing we
We'll
really
have to.
have is one to 8. And then
There are a number of
no,
things that didn't
he
make it
did he give
down
us all
here.
nine? Did he give us all, okay.
There's a lot of things I don't have at this end that didn't reach, there weren't enough.
Didn't you get one from Mr.
There were a
Reed?
lot of things that there weren't enough of, so
All right.
we're really going to
Because
need
you talked
complete
too much. If
sets.
you didn't talk so much, I'd give it to you
Really
first.
going to need complete sets.
Okay, do you have anything else?
I do.
Quickly, please.
I do.
I have your folder, Nick, that I have.
An email that I'd like to enter into evidence
Is it
from,
signed? If
it's,
it's not signed, I'm sorry, we cannot take it in evidence. We do not take unsigned email.
Who's the sender of it? Are you the sender?
Are you the sender? No.
no, the sender is Jim Rogers, who is the vice president of,
We don't take, Mr. Rogers will have to come or sign it.
so if I have a recipient of this email, can I, and if I say to somebody who's on this list, like Colleen Price, there's 50 people,
No, the one-
Renee's
the
on
one-
this list?
The original person who sent it needs to be,
Well, are you introducing it for the purpose of showing that it was sent, or for the facts alleged, for the credibility of the facts alleged
I am just
in it?
introducing it to state that on, and I'll just do my summary very quickly. March 1st, March 10th, March 16th, there were repeated dialogues between Eastern University and the neighbors, whereas we were trying to address the fact that this was not okay with the neighborhood. The neighborhood, and I can't speak for the neighborhood, for many neighbors, they were not okay with this sale. And we tried to stop this sale prior to it going through because there were issues like Ms. Price has talked about, how kids are traipsing through the neighborhoods.
All right,
how
maybe
they're-
we can cut to the chase. Do you agree that you received these emails? You don't necessarily agree with the contents, but
No, these are written by Jim Rogers.
to whom?
These emails were sent to neighbors to show that Eastern was trying to talk to the neighbors and advise them of what was going
These
on.
are internal things among the neighbors?
No, this is from Eastern University to the
But it's
neighbors.
from one of the neighbors who actually is a VP at Eastern to the other neighbors, correct,
Correct.
Christina?
Correct, yeah. There's a list of 40 or 50.
So are they authentic, Nick? I mean, is this something you
They're
dispute?
authentic. I mean, they're basically just saying what Eastern's plans are for the site before they purchased it.
Yeah, I have a
With
little
the relevance.
problem with we're getting back to unsigned emails.
Yep, no, we don't
But the-
accept unsigned emails.
Well,
I mean, that's
wait,
just,
but there's a stipulation that they're authentic.
If
so-
the person who sent
That
them, the
should be
party who
okay.
sent them says that they're,
but the person's not here, that party's not here.
But
He's their
counsel's
counsel.
stipulating. He
The-
can
the
he
guy
can
who sent them is
stipulate
a-
to the authenticity of the document.
He'll do that.
Well, Nick is
Will you
just-
authenticate them, that you want them in the record?
I assume they were sent. I don't know. I mean,
Maybe we ought to leave the record open while we
yeah. I mean,
solve this
signed,
problem.
we don't.
You know,
we don't
again,
know
I don't know
from
the
whom they
relevancy
came.
of it. As I said,
The relevancy of it is that if they are asking for a special exception, my point is that they did not do their due diligence, that the neighbors have been against this, and the neighbors tried to make this point prior to the sale going through. It's one thing for them to unknowingly and unwittingly purchase this land and not realize that the neighbors were against it.
I think also where Christina's coming is Eastern claimed a vested right in addition to special exception. I think her argument's dealing with the vested,
Vested right.
not the special exception.
What
Just
he
to let
said.
the board know. Okay?
Thank you.
There you go.
See?
Okay, are you done?
Well, can we enter this into evidence? Are these okay?
Well, not, if no one's going to authenticate it, we
You know,
can't do that.
Christina,
We can't
I don't
do
know
that.
if they
So
were
then
sent.
can I-
That's the board's rule, and
Okay,
we're not
but-
going to bend on that one.
Okay, can we leave, I think Mr. Dolan said leave it open.
But we left, all right.
Does
It
that
is going to be
mean-
left open. We're not going to make a decision tonight.
Yeah,
Do I
but
give
that-
them to you to leave it open, or?
No, you
No,
won't
you'll
get
have to,
them
if you want
authenticated.
them in, you have to get them authentic.
are we going to take evidence at the next hearing too?
Yeah, because it's going to be open, so we're not going to
Okay.
close it, you know, because we got
So
to
there won't be another opportunity to present the evidence.
Okay. Would Mr. Conigli agree to possibly put these into evidence between now and the next hearing?
I don't know. I can't. I
You
have no
can
idea.
subpoena Mr. Rogers if you would like.
Super. We're happy to do that, because that would actually help us a lot, because he was a main guy communicating with us. I personally met with him, Colleen personally met with him, and he tried to establish that he was working with the neighbors. In reality, he never was willing to address any of the neighborhood concerns about the moving traffic and moving people. And I think that deals to the vested right issue. So,
I don't see how it deals with vested right, but
Okay, you ready to
okay.
conclude?
and also note that these letters are from a neighbor. They're not from the township.
They're from Jim Rogers, Vice President
meant-
of Eastern University.
I meant Colleen's letters.
Oh, okay. But I would like to establish, Mr. Coniglia said that those are from Colleen. In reality, we were working with the township, and therefore, the township was writing letters like the one he did to Mr. Gelling. That's the right way.
And that's in the record.
Correct, okay. So there was notice by all parties to the trustees and to the executives that the residents, or a huge number of residents, were not in favor of this. I'd like to also just state that there were at least 4 or 5 meetings where there were 50, 75 neighbors that were concerned and vehemently opposed to the issues with Eastern because they had not established good faith in trying to deal with these issues of impact to the neighborhood. So impact to the neighborhood, I think, addresses the health, safety, and welfare.
Let me ask you a question, if I can.
Please.
If Eastern had not bought the property,
Right.
prior to Eastern purchasing the property, who used it? Right, the same people are using it now. So the problem really existed prior to them purchasing it.
This has absolutely no relevance. The relevance was that this was an accessory use for a legal parking lot.
But you're still not answering my question. I mean, the people walking through Ms. Price's yard started the day they bought it?
Oh, you're saying who's been walking through the yards?
Well, no, I'm just saying, you're saying that one of the reasons why you're upset about this being a parking lot and Eastern using it as a parking lot is because the students walk all over the place.
Right.
Which is, I mean, this is not a problem belonging to just Eastern. I mean, this is This is all students that live in Radnor Township.
You know what, quite frankly, my issue, and anybody who knows my involvement with Radnor Township, is that I believe the judicial group in the township, which you guys are quasi-judicial, has to enforce our laws. And not just give a break to big institutions or anybody with money.
I don't think we do that. I think
No,
that's unfair of
just-
this board to say
No,
that we give
I'm
breaks
not-
to big
I'm
institutions.
not saying that of you. I'm saying in the past, I've been involved with Radnor Township for 7 years. So let's just say in the past, the Board of Commissioners gave a lot of breaks to people and didn't
I
follow
am
the laws.
really going to object to this, because I've been involved in those discussions, and believe me, it is pulling teeth for the institutions to get anything out of Radnor Township.
Because you're going to be the last person to talk tonight.
Okay, my only point in this summary is that I believe if you folks are enforcing the law as stated by Radnor Township's interpretation of the law, that use is not permitted. And that's all I'm asking. Just please follow the law. That's all I want. We've got great laws on the books. They're there to protect the people.
It's also, we also have to interpret what the zoning ordinance says. I mean, and a lot of times, its interpretation is different to each person. So it's this board's job to interpret what we believe it says and what it means to say. And if we think, that some relief should be given, we give the minimum amount of relief that we deem necessary.
Well, and not only that, but the whole point of this board is to give the residents a chance to appeal something that the township has decided, rather than to simply say, well, Matt and John say the case is X, and well, therefore it must certainly be X. I mean, everyone gets a chance to say, well, Matt and John are wrong on this point, and this is why.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that you allowed Colleen to speak and for me to speak as parties, because that proves your point, Mr. Dolan, and I really appreciate that, because when it gets to a point where only certain people get to talk, then we've sort of lost the whole point of these boards, and that is exactly what you're saying.
You
so
also
I
had
appreciate it.
something else you were going to give me. Are you going to put that in next time? Not the emails, but there was another piece you said you're going to give us a clean copy?
I did give it to you.
Okay, that was that.
Yep,
okay.
I did give it to
So
you.
we got everything that you're going to give us that has been authenticated by whoever did it.
And I will try and get, maybe, if I got Mr. Rogers to write, how does he authenticate it? Does he have to sign it? Like, how could I get those emails authenticated so that I'm establishing that there was this pattern of just complete disregard to the neighbors?
I don't think it's really relevant. I don't think you should even waste your time.
Well,
No?
What you could do is, if he says he wrote them, he could. I mean, he's still at Eastern. He could let Eastern's counsel know that he in fact wrote them,
Right.
and perhaps Eastern's counsel would stipulate to that fact.
Okay, got it. Can I ask you a question? Is the establishment of a walking path from the parking lot to Eastern a relevant point? Like, how the students get from point A to point B, is that important?
Here's the relevancy that I would see that it would have,
Okay.
okay? Is that it would be a compromise relative to the parking lot. In other words, you're saying, how are we going to solve the problems we have? We need you to do A, B, C, and D. If you do A, B, C, and D, then, maybe we're okay with the parking lot. That's the relevancy of it.
Okay.
And that's kind of
Do you mean a future path or one that's there now?
No, I'm saying a path,
Okay.
how to establish.
You're not saying there's not a well-worn path, but sometimes people going across the lawn leave a
I'm just
path.
saying-
And
Like
Is that
Villanova
important to your
has a lot, and they have it's lit, and it has
And they have a
phone
beautiful
booths
walking
on it.
path.
Right, right.
Yes, they have a beautiful
They're the
walking
kind of
path.
things that you should be meeting with. Not don't buy the property. Hey, when you buy that property, you need to do this so that
Okay,
it's safe.
and
That's what you should be working on.
Okay, thank you. And that is exactly what my letters from Mr. Rogers authenticate, that those conversations have been happening ad nauseum, that we have nonstop been saying, put a path on Eagle Road to safely bring the kids. And we've been having those meetings. Can you do one on Eagle Road so it's the highest use, a nice, safe walking path? It'll deal with Cabrini, it'll deal with Valley Forge kids, and it will deal with Eastern kids. Will you do that? And they have point blank in these emails said, we will not do it. So they're
Not
sort
only
of
that, but the
saying-
kids might not use it. They might still cut through the park. If I'm that kid, I'm coming through the park
No,
because
if
it's
there's a
faster.
beautiful, clear lot, they don't want to be walking. If there's an easy, direct route on Eagle Road to get from point A to point B that's a nice, well-lit, it's a very dangerous, I don't know if you know this particular plot of land. It's really dangerous. And you're dodging people. You don't want to kill them.
Actually, walking on Eagle Road is probably be more dangerous.
No.
At
I'm
that
saying,
point.
no. What we suggested was actually putting a nice 6-foot walking path on Cabrini's.
Why don't you call Mr. Caniglia and kind of go over, he's
we have.
the best,
Well,
he's the
you
best
weren't-
compromiser I've seen here tonight, except for Mr. Rice.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the kind of things you should be doing, okay?
It's a testament, I think.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna end tonight's meeting, but this is gonna be continued. You wanna?
I know John wants to file, then I like to file like a reply, so you guys have it ahead of time. I probably need a week.
We're also talking about. Oh, yeah. We're also talking about a stipulation of facts as well, because there's certain ordinances as to what was in effect at various times that we'll have to talk to Mr. Baumann about. And I would provide a caveat that if there's an issue that we need further testimony on from Mr. Baumann, we would have to do that to clarify it. But I'm hoping that we can do it by a stipulation, and just to say, on such and such a date, this ordinance was in effect, and this was the key provision of the ordinance.
I think that
We're keeping the record open.
Yeah, we're keeping, the
Correct.
record's not gonna close tonight.
which
We're gonna
means
keep it
there'll be
open.
testimony. I'd like to talk about briefing and so forth. Mr. Chairman, I would really like to see all briefs, reply briefs, counter briefs, and so forth, all in our hands at least a week before the next hearing.
Is that good enough? Can you do that a week
Yeah.
before the next hearing?
Yeah.
And do you have to have it
That's the
scheduled?
third-
When is that going to be?
So the reply would be due the week before, and everybody else, you guys can work out a schedule
Yeah.
It's,
amongst yourselves on
what's that? It's the
how much
third
time you
Thursday.
need.
We meet the third Thursday, all the time.
So between now and then, we're going to have a stipulation submitted. I guess that night we could submit it. But we're going to try to put that together.
17?
Who is going to reply to Mr. Schubert's brief on intervention? Do you oppose that, John?
I thought it was obvious that
Is there objection
she
to?
had standing, but I'll write a little paragraph pointing out why
Ms.
Mr.
Price, are
Schubert-
you going to
Is there-
reply to that brief?
Is there an objection to the standing of anybody but Ms. Price?
I also provided an objection to
Right. I'll address the standing issue of the residents. That's, I think your solicitor pointed out the recent case that's pretty much on point, but, so I'll do that. But you want briefs a week before February 7th?
I mean, just Ms. Price and Ms. Peroni need to know whether they're expected to file something. So,
They don't expect it to, but they want to. I
Yeah.
think if
Yeah.
anybody's filing a brief.
A written
we need to see
statement
it a week
or-
before.
John, you may want to, if you could file a little bit before, a week before, because we may have to reply to your brief.
Week,
But that won't give John a whole lot of time or the board members for a reply brief. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it sounds to me like briefs in opposition to the parking lot on behalf of the township ought to be in by a date certain, and then there's got to be a reply brief, and maybe we ought to establish that all, you know.
Yeah, do you want to
brief-
back it up? When do you want the reply brief from? And then John could just file his brief a week before that. We'll only
Yeah,
need a
well,
week.
from my perspective, I would ask that we have all the briefs and reply briefs that we're going to have, whether it's from the township or from Eastern or from Valley Forge or from Ms. Price or Ms. Perone or anybody else, every one of them in our hands a week before, because that'll give me a chance to look at them.
February 10th, is that what?
Yeah, because the 17th is the next hearing, right?
Yeah. Now, to the extent that the.
Is that okay? Is everyone okay with that one, that date? That would be the 10th that John would need them by.
I guess the only question I have there is, you already have mine, and so I would like to see John's brief and response, and I would like some time to reply. I probably don't need much time, John Ryan, to reply, but if he's going to give it
I guess.
to us a week ahead of time, I'm probably still going to need at least 3 or 4 days to
Well, should we
respond.
have a brief, I mean, the question I'm asking is, should we have a briefing schedule where all briefs supporting the township and in opposition to the parking lot, whether they come from the township or Ms. Price or Ms. Perone, have to be in by a date ahead of the, what was it, the 10th we were talking about? So, and then give Mr. Cornelia and you a chance to respond.
That's what I was suggesting, by having the replies be due on the week before, on the 10th, and then working back.
Why don't we'll submit our brief by February 5th.
Okay. Should we make February 5th the date that all briefs that are in opposition to the project, whether that's your...
Yeah, I have an extension. I'm going to be out of town until February 5th.
Hire a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, start now.
We can't change the schedule for your personal needs, sorry.
Do it before you leave. Do it before you leave. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
You want a response from me by the 10th?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, okay?
I just scanned it.
And that would be true of Mr. Schubert as well.
Thank you. And then we'll work on the stipulation. I'll work with Mr. Ross on the stipulation as well.
And as a plea, anything that can be gotten to us earlier rather than
Okay.
later is always welcome.
Closes the meeting.
Oh, and everybody consents, by the way, to an extension of the hearing?
Yes.
Everybody can,